They say blood is thicker than water, but in my family, blood is just currency. For 32 years, I was the invisible accountant while my brother was worshipped as a financial god, despite never earning a clean dime. But here's the secret: the estate they are desperate to steal has belonged to me for 5 years. When Mom screamed that question, my answer was not just a refusal, it was a permanent eviction notice. My name is Hazel Winfield. To the world outside the steel and glass monolith of Sterling and Hart, I am a ghost within these walls. However, I am a forensic accountant, a surgeon who operates not on flesh and bone, but on ledgers and hidden offshore accounts. I have spent the last 10 years tracking money that people desperate to hide. And if there is one universal truth I have learned in a decade of hunting white-collar criminals, it is that numbers possess a morality that human beings lack. Numbers do not lie. They do not favor the golden child. They do not look at a daughter and see a disappointment simply because she chose stability over spectacle. I am 32 years old, and in the eyes of my family, I am a failure. It is a Tuesday in late November, and the wind off Lake Michigan is sharp enough to cut through the wool of my coat. I stand by the window of my office on the 45th floor, looking down at the sprawling grid of Chicago. From up here, the chaos looks organized. Down there, in the suburbs where my parents live, the chaos is emotional, messy, and loud. My phone vibrates on the mahogany desk. It is a text from my mother. "Patricia, don't be late for Thanksgiving. Tyler has big news. Dress nice for once." I place the phone face down. The screen is cracked, not because I cannot afford a new one, but because I simply have not bothered. It fits the narrative they have constructed for me. In the Winfield family mythology, I am the struggle. I am the dull, penny-pinching spinster who crunches numbers in a windowless basement, which is where they imagine I work while my brother, Tyler, is the visionary. Tyler Winfield. I am 35 years old, a man who has never held a job for longer than 6 months, yet walks through life with the unearned confidence of a king. I sit back in my chair, the leather creaking softly. The silence of my office is a luxury I worked 80-hour weeks to earn. My colleagues here know me as a partner, a woman who unraveled the chaotic embezzlement scheme of a Fortune 500 company last spring. But to Arthur and Patricia Winfield, I am just Hazel. Poor Hazel, boring Hazel. I close my eyes and let the memory of last Christmas wash over me. It is a necessary torture, a reminder of why I have built walls so high and thick around my true life. The memory smells of roasted turkey and expensive, cloying perfume. We were at the old house then, the Victorian on Elm Street, that had been in the family for 2 generations. We were gathered around the mahogany dining table. Tyler was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, a shimmering silver thing that looked ridiculous under the dining lights. "It is called next-gen logistics," Tyler was saying, waving a wine glass, sloshing Merlot onto the white tablecloth. "We are going to disrupt the supply chain using blockchain integration. I just need a seed round of $50,000. And by Q3, we are talking a return on investment of 400%. I sat at the end of the table, cutting my meat into precise, identical squares. I did the math in my head instantly. The logistics sector was saturated. His buzzwords were empty. The margin for error was non-existent. "Tyler," I had said, keeping my voice low, "have you filed the incorporation papers? What is your overhead?" The market for blockchain and logistics is currently undergoing a correction of nearly 20%. The silence that followed was immediate and icy. My father, Arthur, slammed his fork down. "There she goes again," he sneered, looking at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance. "Always the wet blanket. Hazel, why can you not just be happy for your brother? He is a dreamer. He is going to change the world." "I am just asking about the business plan." "Dad," I replied. "Business plan." Mom laughed, a high, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Hazel, you and your little spreadsheets. You live your life looking at the ground, hunting for pennies." Tyler looks at the stars. That is why people want to invest in him. That is why he is special. Special. That was the word. Tyler was special. I was necessary. Perhaps like a utility bill. But Tyler was the main event. That night, I drove home in silence. I did not drive to the cramped studio apartment in the city that I told them I rented. I drove an hour west, out past the city limits, where the noise of Chicago fades into the rustling of trees and the quiet hum of nature. I drove to the Willow Estate. My parents believe I live in squalor because it suits their worldview. If I am successful, their neglect of me becomes cruel. If I am struggling, their neglect is justified because I obviously did not listen to their advice. But the truth is, 5 years ago, I bought the Willow Estate. It was my grandfather, Elias Winfield, who left me the seed money. Not directly, he knew Arthur would have sniffed it out and handed it to Tyler to blow on sports cars or gambling. Grandpa Elias left me a trust, hidden under layers of legal protections that required a forensic accountant to decipher. He knew I would find it. He knew I was the only one who could. I remember the day he taught me to read a ledger. I was 12. He sat in his library, surrounded by the scent of old paper and pipe tobacco. "People lie. Hazel," he had wheezed, tapping a yellowed page with a gnarled finger. "They lie about who they love. They lie about who they are, but they never lie in their checkbooks. You follow the money, and you see the soul of a man." He was the only one who looked at me and saw potential, not a deficit. When he died, the family mourned the loss of his potential fortune, furious to find his accounts seemingly empty. They never knew that the bulk of his liquid assets had been moved, legally and quietly, into a holding company named Veritas, of which I was the sole beneficiary. I used that money, combined with my bonuses from the firm, to buy the estate. It is a sprawling property, built in 1922. It has 12 bedrooms, a library that rivals the public one in town, and 6 acres of weeping willows that shield the house from the road. It is my sanctuary. I spent 3 years restoring it, sanding the floors myself on weekends, repainting the crown molding, bringing the overgrown gardens back to life. It is worth $3.5 million, and my parents think I can barely afford heat. I pull myself back to the present. The text message on my desk is still dark. Tyler has big news. I know what the news is, or rather, I know the context of the news. Tyler married Bianca 6 months ago. Bianca is a woman who looks at a price tag before she looks at a face. She fits right in. They have 2 children, twins, Mason and Olivia, from her previous marriage. Though Tyler adopted them, they are 4 years old. I love those children. It is a painful, secret ache in my chest. I sent them educational toys for their birthday coding blocks and puzzles. Bianca sent me a thank you text saying, "Thanks for the stuff, but we really prefer brand name clothes." Hazel, maybe next time just send cash. I have not seen the twins in 3 months. "We are just so busy with the new social circle," Mom had told me over the phone. "You know, high society events, it is not really your scene. Hazel, you would feel uncomfortable." The reality of the big news hits me a week later. Not at Thanksgiving, but through the grapevine of the financial district. I am at a lunch meeting with a client, a nervous CEO, who thinks his CFO is skimming off the top. We are eating at a bistro on the Riverwalk. My phone buzzes with a news alert, but I ignore it until the client leaves. When I check the screen, I feel a cold knot form in my stomach. Not surprise, never surprise, just the heavy realization of gravity taking hold. The market for Titan coin is wobbling. Titan coin, that is Tyler's latest obsession. He did not just invest in it, he became a regional promoter. He convinced Mom and Dad that this was the future. "Better than Bitcoin," he had told them. "We get in on the ground floor, we sell at the peak, and we are billionaires." I had investigated Titan coin 6 months ago when Tyler first mentioned it. It took me 45 minutes to find the red flags. The liquidity pool was shallow. The founders were anonymous ghosts with IP addresses tracing back to a server farm in a jurisdiction with 0 extradition laws. It was a classic pump and dump scheme, dressed up in glossy marketing and buzzwords like decentralized freedom. I tried to warn them. I sat them down in their living room, my laptop open, charts and graphs displayed clearly. The yield they are promising is mathematically impossible, I had explained, my voice steady. 300% annual returns are not investment. They are theft. Someone is paying for that, and eventually, the money runs out. You are just jealous, Tyler had screamed, his face turning a blotchy red. You are jealous because I am going to be rich and you are going to be stuck in your cubicle forever. Mom had put a hand on his shoulder, glaring at me. Hazel, stop trying to sabotage your brother. We have already sold the house. That was the moment the ground fell out from under me. You did what? I whispered. We sold the house on Elm Street, Dad said, puffing out his chest. We got a good price, cash buyer. We are putting it all into Titan coin, and we are using the rest to put a down payment on the penthouse at the generic Ritz-Carlton downtown for Tyler and Bianca. They need an address that matches their future status. And where will you live? I asked, feeling lightheaded. With them, of course, Mom said, smiling dreamily. It is a duplex penthouse. Plenty of room. We are going to live like kings. Hazel. And when we do not come knocking on our door asking for a handout. That was 6 months ago. They moved into the penthouse. They posted photos on Instagram daily, champagne brunches, designer furniture, the view of the skyline. They looked happy. They looked rich. But I knew the numbers. I knew that the down payment on that penthouse was massive, but the monthly mortgage payments were astronomical. I knew that without the returns from Titan Coin. They could not afford the HOA fees, let alone the mortgage. They had burned the lifeboats to build a yacht made of paper. Now, sitting in the bistro, I swiped through the financial news. Rumors of liquidity crisis at Titan Exchange, withdrawals halted for technical maintenance. SEC announces probe into unregulated crypto assets. I close my eyes. It is starting. I pay the bill, $140, a sum my mother thinks I spend on groceries for a month, and walk back to the office. The wind is colder now. The city feels sharper. I get back to my desk and pull up the deep dive software I use for work. I type in Tyler's name. I type in my parents' names. The results cascade down the screen in red and black text. Credit utilization, 98%. Loans outstanding, 3. High-interest private lenders. Mortgage status. 30 days past due. They are not just broke. They are underwater. They are drowning. And they are currently sipping champagne in a penthouse they do not own, waiting for a payout that will never come. I lean back, looking at the 2 monitors glowing in the dim afternoon light. On the left screen is my work stable, profitable, respected. On the right screen is the disaster of the Winfield family. I think about the Willow estate. I think about the fireplace in the library, the one I restored with my own hands, scrubbing away 50 years of soot to reveal the beautiful marble underneath. I think about the silence there, the peace. My phone buzzes again. It is Bianca this time. Hey Hazel, are you coming to the gala? Tyler is throwing next week? It is a future of finance party. Tickets are $500, but maybe we can get you a discount if you promise to help clean up after I stare at the message. The audacity is breathtaking. It is almost art. I do not reply. Instead, I open a new file on my secure server. I name it Case Study Winfield Insolvency. I start saving screenshots. I save the text messages. I save the social media posts of them popping bottles of Dom Perignon while their credit score plummets. I archive the email where I warned them, time-stamped and dated. Grandpa Elias taught me that in forensic accounting, you do not act on suspicion. You act on evidence. You build a wall of facts so high that when the accused tries to run, they hit it and break. The rumors are just whispers now. Wind in the trees. But I know a hurricane when I see the barometer drop. The crash is coming. The Golden Prince is about to find out that his crown is made of painted lead. And when they fall, they will look for a soft place to land. They will look for the daughter they mocked. the accountant they despised. I turn off my monitors. The screen goes black. Reflecting my face, I look tired. Perhaps, but I do not look weak. I whisper to the empty office, a promise to the grandfather who saved me. Let them come. The collapse did not happen with a whisper. It happened with a scream that tore through the financial district of Chicago like a siren. It was exactly 10:14 in the morning on a Tuesday when the first domino fell. I was in my office, reviewing a tax audit for a mid-sized logistics firm, when the Bloomberg terminal on the partner's desk across the hall flashed red. Then, my phone began to vibrate. It was not a text from my family. It was a push notification from the Wall Street Journal. Titan Coin founders vanish. $2 billion in market cap wiped out in 40 minutes. I did not gasp. I did not panic. I simply minimized my spreadsheet and opened the newsfeed. The headline was brutal, but the details were worse. The article described a classic liquidity trap. The founders of Titan Coin had drained the liquidity pool, transferred the assets to a series of untraceable wallets, and scrubbed their digital footprints. But they had left one person holding the bag. They had left the regional promoter, the face of the brand in the Midwest. My brother, Tyler Winfield, by noon. The news cycle had shifted from financial tragedy to criminal investigation. A local news station was broadcasting live from outside the Ritz-Carlton residences. The banner at the bottom of the screen read, "Local entrepreneur accused of mini Ponzi scheme." They showed a clip of Tyler from 3 months ago. He was wearing a suit that was too tight, standing on a stage at a hotel conference room, shouting into a microphone. "We are not just building wealth," he was yelling, sweat glistening on his forehead. "We are building a legacy. If you do not buy in now, you are choosing to be poor." I watched the clip in silence. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Then came the text from the family group chat, a chat I had been removed from 6 months ago, but had found a way to monitor through a cloned cloud account I had set up years ago for parental tech support. Mom, Tyler. Pick up the phone. The bank is calling Dad. Why are the accounts frozen? I cannot access the retirement fund, Bianca. There are reporters in the lobby. They are asking if we knew. Tyler, where are you? I sat in my ergonomic chair, sipping lukewarm coffee, and watched their world burn. The reality of the situation was far worse than the news reported. As a forensic accountant, I knew exactly what was happening behind the scenes. Tyler had not just promoted the coin, he had leveraged his own capital to artificially inflate the price to attract local investors. When the price crashed, he was not just at zero, he was in the negative. And because my parents had co-signed everything because they had believed in the myth of the Golden Prince, they were dragged down with him. 2 days later, the facade completely crumbled. I stood across the street from the Ritz-Carlton, hidden behind sunglasses and a trench coat, watching the scene unfold. It was cold, a biting Chicago wind whipping through the streets. A moving truck was parked illegally in the loading zone, but it was not a luxury moving service. It was a foreclosure team. I watched as my father, Arthur, stumbled out of the lobby. He looked 10 years older than he had at Christmas. He was arguing with a man in a windbreaker who was holding a clipboard. I could not hear the words, but I knew the body language. It was the frantic, desperate pleading of a man who has realized that his authority means nothing to a bank ledger. My mother followed him, clutching a Louis Vuitton bag that was likely filled with jewelry she hoped to pawn. She was crying, her mascara running down her cheeks in dark, jagged lines. She looked at the doorman, a man she had likely tipped poorly and treated worse, looking for sympathy. He stared straight ahead, stone-faced. Then came Tyler and Bianca. Tyler was not in handcuffs yet, but he looked like a man walking to the gallows. He was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, hiding his face. Bianca was dragging 2 crying children, my niece and nephew, Mason and Olivia. My heart clenched for the kids. They were innocent. They were 4 years old. They did not understand why their toys were being left behind, why strangers were locking the doors to their home, why their father was shaking. I wanted to run across the street and grab the children. I wanted to put them in my car and drive them to the Willow estate, to give them hot cocoa and a warm bed, But I stayed frozen. If I intervened now, if I showed my hand before the lesson was learned, nothing would change. Tyler would just use my resources to dig another hole. My parents would claim my success as their own management. I had to let them hit the bottom. I took out my phone and snapped a photo, not for social media, for the file, Exhibit B, the eviction. Later that afternoon, the legal hammer fell. I accessed the public records from the county clerk's website. The list of liens against my parents was staggering. They had taken out a second mortgage on the penthouse, which they had barely owned for 6 months to double down on the dip of Titan coin. They had maxed out 4 credit cards. But the most terrifying detail was a filing from a company called Quick Cash Solutions, LLC. I recognized the name in my line of work. You learn the names of the predatory lenders. These were not banks. These were shark tanks. They charged interest rates that bordered on criminal, and their collection methods were aggressive. My parents had borrowed $50,000 from them last week, likely in a frantic attempt to cover the margin calls for Tyler. Now, with the assets frozen by the SEC investigation and the bank seizing the property, Arthur and Patricia Winfield were not just homeless. They were hunted. Tyler was arrested that evening. It was a technicality wire fraud charges related to the local investors he had personally solicited. He was released on bail the next morning because the flight risk was deemed low. He had no money to buy a plane ticket, but his passport was surrendered. The entire family of 6 Arthur, Patricia, Tyler, Bianca, and the 2 kids squeezed into a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, near the industrial park. I waited. I knew the call would come. It was a matter of probability. They had burned every bridge in their social circle. The high society friends they had bragged about were now distancing themselves, terrified of being associated with a fraud investigation. There was only one person left who they thought they could manipulate. The quiet one, the boring one. The phone rang on a Thursday. 6 days after the crash, I stared at the screen. Mom. I let it ring 3 times before answering. I pitched my voice to be neutral, professional, the voice of a woman who was busy but polite. Hello? Hazel, darling. My mother's voice chirped through the speaker. It was a sound I had not heard in years, a forced, sugary brightness that set my teeth on edge. It was the voice she used when she wanted to return a dress she had already worn. How are you? Sweetie, it has been simply ages. It has been 6 months. Mom, I said, typing on my keyboard to keep the rhythm of my work going. Is everything okay? Oh, everything is fine. Just fine. She lied. The desperation leaked through the cracks in her tone. We have just been so busy with restructuring. You know how business is. Ups and downs. I saw the news. Mom. There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath. The news? She scoffed. Fake news. Hazel. All of it. The media just loves to tear down successful people. Your brother is a victim of his own genius. Really, people are just jealous. He is under investigation for fraud, I stated flatly. It is a misunderstanding, she shrieked, then quickly lowered her voice. Anyway, that is not why I'm calling. I miss my girl. We should have lunch, just the 2 of us. Catch up. My treat? Her treat. I nearly laughed. She had negative $400 in her checking account. I knew because I had checked it 10 minutes ago. I have an hour on Friday, I said. 1 o'clock. Perfect. Let us meet at that little Italian place near your office, the one with the breadsticks. She chose Olive Garden. Not because she liked it, she used to call it peasant food, but because she knew it was cheap, and she assumed that was my speed. I arrived at 1 o'clock sharp. My mother was already there, sitting in a booth near the back. She looked haggard. The lighting in the restaurant was unforgiving. Her designer suit was wrinkled, as if it had been pulled from a suitcase, and her hair, usually dyed a perfect blonde, was showing gray at the roots. When she saw me, she plastered on a smile that looked painful. Hazel. Oh, look at you. So professional. She made professional sound like an insult, like plain. I sat down. Hello, Mom. She ordered a water with lemon. I am on a detox. she claimed. I ordered an iced tea. For the first 20 minutes, she did not ask me a single question about my life. She did not ask about my job, my health, or why I looked tired. Instead, she launched into a monologue about the injustice of the universe. "It is just a temporary setback," she whispered, leaning over the table, her eyes darting around to see if anyone was listening. "Tyler has a plan to fix it. He just needs a little time. But the police, Hazel, they are so rude. They took his laptop. Can you believe that his intellectual property—" "Mom, he lost people's money," I said. "Retirement funds, college savings. They were investors," she hissed. "They knew the risks. Why is it Tyler's fault that the market crashed? He is the victim here. Do you know we had to leave the penthouse? The bank made a clerical error. They claim we missed payments, but Arthur is sorting it out. In the meantime, we are staying at a boutique hotel." "A Motel 6 is not a boutique hotel." "Mom," I said. She froze. Her eyes narrowed. "How do you know that—" "I have eyes," I said, taking a sip of tea. "I read the police report. It is public record." She slumped back in the booth, the fight draining out of her. For a second, just a second, I thought she might be honest. I thought she might say, "We messed up. We are scared. Help us." If she had said that, if she had shown 1 ounce of genuine humility, the ending of this story might have been different. I might have written a check. I might have opened a door. But she did not. She straightened her jacket and looked at me with a calculating glint in her eyes. The predator was back. "Well, since you know," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "you understand why we are in a tight spot. It is humiliating. Hazel, your father is a respected man. We cannot be seen in a place like that. It is dangerous. And the children, poor Mason and Olivia? How are the kids?" I asked the only genuine question of the lunch. "Suffering," she said, seizing the opening. "They need stability. They need family." She reached across the table and tried to take my hand. I pulled it back, picking up my napkin. "You know," she said, tilting her head, "I was thinking about you the other day, all alone out there in the country. It must be so lonely for you. A young woman, living by herself in a rental. Here it comes, the pivot. I like the quiet," I said. "Nonsense," she insisted. "Humans need connection. And honestly, Hazel, it is not safe. You need a man in the house, or at least family." She took a sip of her water, leaving a lipstick stain on the rim. "Since we are between houses right now, waiting for the lawyers to clear up this mess with the penthouse, I was thinking we could come stay with you, just for a few weeks. It would be good for you. You would have company. Bianca can cook well. She can learn, and Dad can help you with whatever it is you do out there. Gardening." She paused, waiting for my gratitude. She actually expected me to be thankful. She thought she was offering me a favor. In her mind, she was not asking for charity. She was bestowing her presence upon my pathetic, lonely life. "You want to move into my rental?" I asked, keeping my face blank. "Well, I am sure it is small," she said dismissively. "We can make do. Tyler and Bianca can take the main bedroom. Obviously, since they have the kids, you can sleep on the couch, or maybe put a mattress in the living room. It is just temporary. And Arthur and I can take the other room if there is one. If not, we can share with the kids." She was planning the logistics of displacing me in my own home. A home she had never visited. A home she assumed was a shack. "Mom," I said, "I do not think that is a good idea." "Don't be selfish, Hazel," she snapped, the mask slipping instantly. "We are family. Family helps family. Besides, it is not like you have a husband or children to worry about. What else do you have to do with your space? It is wasted on you." "I have work," I said. "I work from home often." "Work," she sneered, looking at spreadsheets. "You can do that anywhere. You can do that at the library. Tyler needs a base of operations to launch his defense. He needs focus." She leaned in again. "Think about the optics. Hazel, If people find out your brother is in a motel while you are sitting in a house, even a rented one, it makes you look bad. It makes you look heartless. The threat was subtle, but it was there. Do this, or we will paint you as the villain. I looked at my watch. I have to get back to the office. Wait, she said. We are coming tomorrow. I told Tyler to pack. We will be there around noon. Send me the address. I know it is out past the highway, but I do not have the specific location. She assumed I had already agreed. She assumed no was just a negotiation tactic she could steamroll over. I stood up and placed a $20 bill on the table for my tea and her water. I will text you the address, I said. A smile spread across her face, triumphant. Smug. She thought she had won. She thought she had bullied the mouse into submission. Good girl, she said. And Hazel. Try to clean up a bit before we get there. Bianca has dust allergies. I walked out of the restaurant and into the cold Chicago air. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with a cold, hard adrenaline. I would send her the address. Oh yes, I would send her the address. They expected a cramped rental. They expected a doormat daughter. They expected to take over my life, drain my fridge, and insult me while sleeping under my roof. They had no idea what was waiting for them past the highway. They had no idea that the rental was the Willow Estate, a $3.5 million fortress of stone and history. And they certainly had no idea that the landlord was not some absent stranger, but the woman they had underestimated for 32 years. I took out my phone and sent the text. Just the address. Nothing else. 142, Blackwood Lane. Then I called my security company. This is Hazel Winfield, I said as I unlocked my car. I am expecting visitors at the main gate tomorrow at noon. Do not let them in until I give the signal, and make sure the cameras are recording in 4K resolution. I want every pixel of their faces to be clear. The trap was set. The Golden Prince and his entourage were coming to claim their castle, unaware that the drawbridge was controlled by the peasant they had scorned. I drove back to work, a small, cold smile playing on my lips. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. The gravel of my driveway crunched under tires at exactly 12:05 in the afternoon. I stood on the porch of the Willow Estate, a cup of Earl Grey tea in my hand, watching the procession of failure roll in. It was a pathetic convoy. First came Tyler's car, a leased luxury SUV that was 2 months overdue for repossession, mud-splattered and looking small against the backdrop of my ancient oaks. Behind it lumbered a rental moving truck, the kind you rent by the hour, driven by my father. He looked terrified behind the wheel of something that large, swerving slightly as he navigated the long, winding path that led from the main gate to the house. They had driven past the private property sign. They had driven past the security cameras that were currently tracking their license plates, and now they were pulling up to the fountain in the center of the circular driveway. I took a slow sip of tea. The steam warmed my face against the chill. I was wearing a cashmere sweater and jeans, clothes that cost more than their entire moving truck's contents. Though they would never know it by looking, to them, I was just Hazel in her casual wear. The SUV door opened, and Tyler stepped out. He stopped dead in his tracks. He looked up at the house. The Willow Estate is not subtle. It is a Georgian manor built of gray stone, with ivy climbing the west wall and tall, arched windows that reflect the sky. It radiates power. It radiates old money. It is the kind of house where senators and captains of industry lived in the 1920s. Tyler's mouth fell open. He took off his sunglasses, blinking as if the sun were playing tricks on him. Then my mother climbed out of the passenger seat. She stumbled a little in her heels she had dressed for a luncheon, not a move, and grabbed Tyler's arm for support. Her eyes swept across the manicured lawn, the three-tiered fountain, and finally, the massive oak double doors where I stood. "This is the address," I heard her whisper. The acoustics of the stone driveway carried her voice perfectly to me. "This cannot be the address. She said a rental." "Maybe she is the caretaker," Tyler suggested. his voice rising with a mix of confusion and sudden, greedy hope. Maybe she is renting the guest house or the servants' quarters. Bianca got out of the back seat, wrestling the twins into their jackets. When she looked up, she didn't say anything. She just stared, her eyes wide, drinking in the wealth like a thirsty woman finding an oasis. My father parked the truck, grinding the gears horribly, and jumped out. "Hazel!" he shouted, waving his hand as if he were greeting a servant. "Hazel, come down here and help us. Where do we park the truck for unloading?" I set my teacup down on the stone railing of the porch. I walked down the 12 limestone steps, my boots clicking rhythmically. I stopped 10 feet away from them. "Hello?" I said. My voice was calm, devoid of warmth. "Hazel," my mother said, rushing forward, her eyes darting around the property with a feverish intensity. "What is this place? Who lives here? Did you get a job as a house manager? Is the owner away?" "I live here," I said simply. "Yes, but who owns it?" Tyler asked, stepping around his mother. He was already scanning the facade, looking for weaknesses, looking for value. "This place is massive. Is it a corporate retreat? A historic landmark?" "It is a historic landmark," I replied, "and I own it." The silence that followed was absolute. The wind rustled the dry leaves of the oak trees, and somewhere in the distance, a crow cawed. "You." My father laughed, a nervous barking sound. "Stop joking, Hazel. We are tired. It has been a long drive. Just tell us which room you are renting so we can put our bags down." "I am not joking," I said, holding his gaze. "I bought the Willow Estate 5 years ago. I restored it. The deed is in my name. The taxes are paid by me. Every brick, every blade of grass, belongs to me." My mother's face went through a complex series of contortions. First disbelief, then shock, and finally, a terrifying realization of how much she had underestimated the daughter she ignored. But then, almost instantly, the shock was replaced by something else. Entitlement. Her posture straightened. She smoothed her skirt. The fear of poverty that had been clinging to her like a bad smell evaporated, replaced by the arrogance of the matriarch. "Well," she said, letting out a breath. Well, you certainly have been keeping secrets, haven't you? A little sneak, just like your grandfather." She walked past me, heading for the stairs. "Come on, Arthur Tyler. Bring the bags. It is freezing out here." "Stop," I said. I did not shout. I did not raise my voice. I simply projected the command with the authority of someone who is used to telling CEOs that they are going to prison. My mother stopped on the first step. She turned around, her eyebrows raised in an arch of pure condescension. "Excuse me, where do you think you are going?" I asked. "Inside," she said, as if explaining something to a toddler. "To our rooms. My God, Hazel, look at the size of this place. You have, 10 bedrooms?" 12. It is ridiculous for one person. It is wasteful." She pointed a manicured finger toward the right side of the house. "We will take that wing. The lighting looks better on that side. Tyler and Bianca can have the master suite if there is one over there. And your father and I will take the next largest. The children can have the nursery." Tyler was already pulling his phone out. "I can turn the library into an office," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "With a backdrop like this, I can relaunch. I can start a consulting firm. Old money aesthetics. People eat that stuff up. Hey, Hazel, is there a pool? If not, we can dig one. I know a guy who does infinity pools on credit." He was already renovating my sanctuary. He was already selling pieces of my piece to fuel his next scam. "I did not invite you inside," I said. Tyler looked up from his phone, a smirk playing on his lips. "Good one, Hayes. Very funny. Now open the door." "I need to take a leak." "I am serious," I said. "This is private property. You are trespassing." My mother walked back down the step. Moving into my personal space, she smelled of stale perfume and panic. "Hazel Winfield, do not be dramatic. We are your family. We are in a crisis. You have a mansion, a literal mansion, and you are acting like a petulant child because we did not call ahead. Fine, we are sorry. Is that what you want to hear? Now let us in. It is not about calling ahead, I said. It is about the fact that you drove here assuming I would save you, assuming that my space is your space. You spent 30 years telling me I was nothing. You spent the last 6 months laughing at me from a penthouse I told you not to buy, and now you want to live here. We are not asking to live here forever, my father shouted, his face turning red. Just until we get back on our feet. What is wrong with you? Look at your brother. Look at his children. I looked at the children. Mason and Olivia were huddling behind Bianca's legs, looking cold and confused. Bianca was staring at me, not with entitlement, but with fear. She knew. She was the only one who realized the power dynamic had shifted. I am looking at them, I said. I see 2 children who are victims of their father's greed and their grandparents' enabling. How dare you? Mom stepped closer, her face inches from mine. Tyler is a visionary. He took a risk, that is what men do, and you sat here in your pile of money, hoarding it like a dragon. While your family suffered, you let us lose the penthouse when you could have written a check. I warned you, I said coldly. I showed you the data. I told you it was a Ponzi scheme. You told me I was jealous. You told me I was boring. Because you are, Tyler yelled, throwing his arms up. You are a soulless bean counter. You do not understand vision. You just understand safety. And now you are punishing us because we tried to be great. I am punishing you because you are a thief, I corrected him. You stole from those investors. Tyler and Mom, Dad, you helped him. You gave him legitimacy. I took a step back, creating a physical boundary between us. Here is the reality, I said. This house is my home. It is not a hotel. It is not a shelter for failed con artists. I do not want you here. I do not want your drama, your noise, or your toxic delusions within 10 miles of my front door. My mother's face went white. Her lips trembled. For a moment, she looked like she might faint. Then, the rage took over. It was a primal, ugly thing. She screamed. It was a sound that made the birds in the trees take flight. I said no to housing my brother's whole family. She mocked my internal thought, twisting the narrative before I had even spoken it fully. Then she delivered the line, the weapon she thought would shatter my resolve. So we sleep on the street. Her voice echoed off the stone facade. Is that what you want? You want your mother sleeping on a park bench? You want your nieces freezing to death in a cardboard box? Is that what makes you feel big? Hazel, is that your revenge? We have nowhere to go. My father joined in, his voice cracking. The accounts are frozen. The cards are declined. We have $80 in cash. Hazel, $80. We are family, Tyler roared, stepping forward aggressively. You owe us. You owe us for raising you. I looked at them, really looked at them. They were like wolves who had fallen into a pit, snarling at the only person holding a rope. I do not owe you a thing, I said softly. I paid for my own college. I bought my own first car. I built my career while you mocked it. You did not raise me. You housed me until I was old enough to escape. I looked at Bianca. She was shivering now, holding the twins tight. But, I said, my voice cutting through their shouting, I am not a monster, unlike you. The screaming stopped. They looked at me, waiting. I have a proposition, I said. Fine, Tyler said, exhaling loudly. We will take the West Wing if the East is being renovated. Whatever. Shut up, Tyler, I snapped. The sharpness of my tone made him flinch. I pointed at Bianca. I will pay for a 2-bedroom apartment in the city for Bianca, Mason, and Olivia. I will pay the rent for 1 month. I will fill the fridge with food. I will provide a stipend for the children's necessities. Bianca's eyes widened. Hazel. However, I continued, turning my gaze to the 3 people who shared my DNA, this offer is for them, only them. What? my mother whispered. Tyler, Arthur, Patricia. I listed their names like I was reading a subpoena. You are not included. You will not step foot in that apartment. If I find out you have stayed there for even one night, I will cancel the lease and evict everyone immediately. You want to split up the family? My father stammered. I want to protect the children from you. I said, you three are adults. You made your choices. You gambled your house. You gambled your reputation. Now you can figure out where to sleep. There is a homeless shelter on 5th Street. They have beds open after 4 in the afternoon. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with shock. They had expected me to fold. They had expected me to offer a compromise where they slept in the guest rooms instead of the master. They never imagined I would cut the cancer out while trying to save the patient. Tyler laughed. It was a dark, unhinged sound. She is crazy. She is actually crazy. Bianca, get in the car. We are not listening to this. Bianca did not move. She looked at the luxury car that was about to be repossessed. She looked at her husband, who was facing prison time. Then she looked at me, and at the warm, solid stone of my house. Bianca, Tyler barked. 1 month, Bianca asked me, her voice trembling. 1 month, I confirmed. Time for you to find a job. Time to file for assistance. A head start. You are considering this. My mother grabbed Bianca's arm, her nails digging into the fabric of her coat. She is trying to destroy us. She is trying to turn you against your husband. I am trying to give those children a bed, I shouted, my control finally fraying at the edges. Something you failed to do because you were too busy buying Louis Vuitton bags with stolen money. My mother moved faster than I expected. She let go of Bianca and lunged at me. The slap echoed like a gunshot. It caught me on the left cheek, a sharp, stinging explosion of pain. My head whipped to the side. I tasted blood where my tooth cut the inside of my lip. I did not touch my face. I slowly turned my head back to look at her. My mother was breathing hard, her hands still raised, shaking. Her eyes were wide, manic. You are ungrateful trash, she spat. I should have left you at the hospital when you were born. You are dead to us. Do you hear me? Dead, if you do not open that door right now and let us all in. You have no mother. You have no father. You are going to regret this. Hazel, Tyler snarled, stepping up beside her. When I get back on top, and I am going to crush you. I will buy this ugly house and bulldoze it. I looked at them one last time. I memorized the hatred in their eyes. I filed it away in the cabinet of my mind. Alongside the bank statements and the legal threats, evidence. I accept your terms, I said quietly. What? Mom blinked, confused. You said I am dead to you. I said, I accept. As of this moment, I am an orphan. I looked at Bianca. My offer stands for 24 hours. Call my lawyer if you want the apartment. His number is on the card I gave you at the wedding. Then, I turned my back on them. Hazel, do not you dare walk away from me, my father shouted. Hazel. I walked up the stone steps. I could hear them screaming behind me. A chorus of impotent rage. I reached the heavy oak door and unlocked it. I stepped inside the foyer, where the crystal chandelier cast a warm golden light on the marble floors. It was quiet here. It smelled of beeswax and lavender. It smelled of safety. I turned around and looked at them through the open doorway one last time. They were standing by the fountain, small and pathetic against the backdrop of the gray sky. Get off my property, I said, or I call the police. I grabbed the heavy iron handle of the door. My mother screamed my name one last time, a sound that was half curse, half sob. I slammed the door shut. The sound was final, a heavy thud that sealed the world out. I threw the deadbolt, then the second lock, then the security bar. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door, listening to my own heart hammer against my ribs. Outside, I could hear muffled shouting, but it felt distant, like a nightmare fading in the morning light. I was alone. I was shaking. My cheek was throbbing. But for the first time in my life, I was free. The silence of the Willow estate was usually my comfort. Tonight, it felt like the breathless quiet before a tornado touches down. After locking the door, I retreated to the library. I did not cry. Crying is a luxury for those who can afford to be vulnerable. Instead, I poured myself a glass of scotch. Grandpa Elias's favorite brand, and sat in the dark, watching the security feed on my tablet. I watched them leave. My father kicked the tire of the rental truck. Tyler spat on my driveway. Bianca looked back once, her face a mask of conflict, before getting into the car. They drove off, leaving skid marks on the gravel. I thought the battle was over for the night. I was wrong. The war had just moved to a new battlefield, the internet. By the next morning, the smear campaign had begun. I woke up to a phone that was vibrating so constantly it was skittering across my nightstand. I picked it up, squinting at the screen. 42 missed calls, 116 text messages. I opened Facebook first. It was a mistake. Tyler had posted a video. It was filmed in what looked like a Motel 6 room with peeling beige wallpaper and harsh fluorescent lighting. He looked disheveled, calculatedly so. His hair was messy, his eyes red-rimmed. Beside him sat my mother, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. "Hey guys," Tyler said to the camera, his voice breaking. "I do not usually do this. I try to be strong, but tonight broke me. We are homeless. My kids are sleeping on a dirty mattress on the floor. And why? Because my own sister, Hazel Winfield, kicked us out." The video cut to a shaky cell phone clip. It was edited, of course. It showed only the moment I said, "Get off my property or I call the police." It showed the massive stone facade of my house looming behind me like a villain's fortress. It cut out the part where I offered to pay for Bianca's apartment. It cut out the part where my mother slapped me. "She lives in a mansion," Tyler narrated over the clip. "A $3 million estate she hid from us while our parents were struggling. We went to her for help, just a place to stay for a few nights, and she slammed the door in our faces. She let her 4-year-old niece and nephew freeze outside. Who does that? Who does that to family?" The caption read, "The face of greed. My sister Hazel Winfield, a partner at Sterling and Hart, watches her parents sleep on the street from her castle. Please share. The world needs to know." It had 12,000 shares. I scrolled through the comments. It was a cesspool. Monster. I hope she loses everything. This is why I hate rich people. Someone should go burn that house down. Sterling and Hart employs this sociopath. Disgusting. Then came the texts. They were from relatives I had not spoken to in a decade. Aunt Linda from Ohio, who never sent a birthday card, wrote, "You are a disgrace to the Winfield name. Your grandfather is rolling in his grave." Cousin Mike, who I knew for a fact had been arrested for DUI twice, texted, "Selfish B-word. How do you sleep at night?" I felt a physical weight pressing on my chest, a sensation of suffocation. It is one thing to know your family is toxic. It is another to have them weaponize the world against you. They were stripping me of my humanity, painting a caricature of a villain so they could play the martyrs. I drove to work. I had to. Hiding would look like guilt. The atmosphere at Sterling and Hart was frigid. Usually, the receptionist, Sarah, smiled and said, "Good morning." Today, she looked down at her keyboard as I walked past. I got to my office and closed the door. 10 minutes later, my intercom buzzed. "Hazel, mister. Sterling wants to see you. Now." I walked to the corner office. Sterling was a man of old-school propriety. He valued discretion above all else. He was sitting behind his desk, looking at an iPad. I could see Tyler's video playing on the screen. "Sit down, Hazel," he said, not looking up. I sat. "We have received 300 emails this morning," he said, finally looking at me over his spectacles. "Some are threatening to boycott the firm. Some just hate mail. They are saying we employ a woman who abuses the elderly." "It is a lie," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling of my hands in my lap. "My brother is under investigation for fraud. He is trying to deflect attention by creating a new narrative where he is the victim. I offered to house his children. He refused unless I took in the whole family. I believe you, Mr. Sterling said, sighing. You are the best forensic accountant I have. I know you adhere to facts, but the public does not care about facts. Hazel, they care about optics. And right now, the optics are that our senior partner is a heartless heiress. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. I need you to take a leave of absence. Paid. Of course, but you need to disappear until this blows over, or until you fix it. You are benching me, I asked. I am protecting the firm, he said. Go home. Hazel, fix your family. I walked out of the building with a box of my personal files, feeling the eyes of every junior associate burning into my back. They were whispering, "That is her, the Ice Queen." I did not go home. I went to the one place where facts still mattered more than feelings. I went to see Arthur Vance. Vance was 80 years old, a lawyer who still used a typewriter because he didn't trust the cloud. He had been Grandpa Elias's attorney for 40 years. His office smelled of dust and peppermints. Hazel, he said, standing up slowly to shake my hand. I saw the video. Your brother has a future in Hollywood, if the prison system doesn't take him first. I need to sue them, I said, sitting down. Defamation, libel, harassment. We will, Vance said, opening a file. But first, we need to secure your perimeter. You are fighting a guerrilla war. Hazel, they are throwing mud. We need to throw concrete. He pulled out a stack of documents. I had my investigator look into Tyler's recent activities. As you asked, it is worse than we thought. He handed me a credit report. Look at the inquiry on the 16th of last month. I scanned the page. There was a hard inquiry from Apex Lending. The applicant's name was Hazel Winfield. He tried to take out a $100,000 loan in your name, Vance said. He stole my identity, I whispered. He tried, Vance corrected. But because you froze your credit 3 years ago, smart girl, it was flagged as fraudulent. The loan was denied. But here's the kicker: he used your parents' address as the correspondence address. He had their permission, Hazel, or at least their complicity. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. It wasn't just Tyler. My parents were willing to let him bankrupt me, to ruin my credit, my career, my life, just to keep his delusions afloat. There is more, Vance said. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a leather-bound book. It was worn. The spine cracked. Your grandfather's personal journal, Vance said softly. He gave it to me a week before he died. He told me to give it to you only when the wolves came knocking. I believe that time is now. I took the book. My hands were shaking. I opened it to a marked page. Grandpa's handwriting was spidery but firm. October 14th, 2015. Arthur and Patricia came to me again today. They want money for Tyler's new venture. I told them no. Arthur shouted at me. He said I was a senile old fool holding on to money I couldn't take with me. They do not know about the trust. They do not know that the Willow estate is not part of the general inheritance. I have put it in a separate entity, the Elias Winfield Preservation Trust. The beneficiary is Hazel, but there is a clause. If Arthur or Patricia ever attempt to contest the will or claim the property, the Omega file is to be released to the IRS. What is the Omega file? I asked, looking up at Vance. It is a nuclear option, Vance said grimly. Your grandfather documented every time your parents borrowed from his accounts while they had power of attorney during his illness. He let it slide because he didn't want his son in jail. But he kept the records. If they sue you for the house, we release the file. They go to prison for elder abuse and embezzlement. They are my parents, I said, the words tasting like ash. They are predators, Vance said, and they are about to strike. As if on cue, a courier arrived at the office door. He looked uncomfortable. I have a delivery for Hazel Winfield. I signed for the envelope. It was thick. I opened it. It was a summons. Plaintiffs. Arthur Winfield and Patricia Winfield. Defendant Hazel Winfield. Nature of suit. civil action for parental support, and partition of assets. I read the legal jargon. It was insane. They were suing me under an archaic filial responsibility law, claiming that they were destitute and I had the means to support them. But the second count was the real dagger. They were claiming that I had committed fraud against the estate of Elias Winfield, that I had manipulated a senile old man to sign the house over to me, depriving the rightful heirs of their inheritance. They were accusing me of the very thing they had done. "They are suing me for alimony," I said, dropping the papers on the desk. "And they want the house." Vance put on his glasses and picked up the summons. He read it silently, his expression hardening. "This is a desperate move," he said. "They are hoping you will settle. They are hoping you will pay them $1 million just to make the noise stop. They are banking on your shame." I thought about the video. I thought about the hate mail. I thought about my mother's slap. I thought about the grandfather who had protected me from beyond the grave. I stood up. The fear was gone. The suffocation was gone. In its place was a clarity so sharp it felt like a blade. "I am not settling," I said. "Good," Vance smiled. "Then we go to war." I walked out of Vance's office and into the street. I took out my phone. I did not open Facebook. I did not check my texts. I called the private investigator Vance had recommended. "This is Hazel Winfield," I said. "I want to hire you for a 24/7 surveillance job. I want to know where my brother goes, who he talks to, and what he eats. And I want you to find out exactly where the money from the house sale went. Every penny. It will be expensive," the voice on the other end said. "I can afford it," I said. "I can afford anything except mercy." I got into my car and drove back to the Willow estate. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. I saw a news van parked outside my gate. A reporter was standing there with a microphone. I did not stop. I pressed the button on my remote, and the heavy iron gates swung open. I drove through, leaving them on the other side. I entered my house, my quiet, empty, beautiful house. I walked to the kitchen and made a sandwich. I ate it standing up. Then I went to the safe in the floor of the pantry. I dialed the combination. Inside lay a stack of hard drives and a file labeled Omega. I took the file out. I ran my fingers over the manila folder. "Okay, Grandpa," I whispered. "Let us teach them a lesson." My phone buzzed one last time that night. It was a text from Bianca. I saw the video. "He made me hold the camera. I am sorry. I stared at the screen. She was an accomplice." "Yes, but she was also a hostage. Do not be sorry." I texted back. "Be ready." I turned off the phone. The silence returned. But this time, it wasn't the silence of a victim. It was the silence of a hunter waiting in the blind. The Cook County courthouse smelled of floor wax, stale coffee, and desperate bargains. It was a smell I knew well from my professional life, usually from the comfortable side of the witness stand where I presented irrefutable data to put embezzlers behind bars. Today, however, I sat at the defendant's table, my hands folded on top of a pristine manila folder, watching a farce unfold. My parents had hired a lawyer named Mr. Greaves. He was a man who wore a suit 2 sizes too large and possessed a voice that projected a theatrical, manufactured outrage. He did not charge by the hour. He took a percentage of the settlement. That made him dangerous. It meant he was hungry. "Your Honor," Greaves bellowed, pacing in front of the bench, "we are here today to rectify a gross injustice, a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. We have here 2 loving, devoted parents, Arthur and Patricia Winfield, who sacrificed everything their youth, their savings, their very health to raise a daughter who has now turned her back on them in their hour of greatest need." I sat perfectly still. Beside me, Arthur Vance, my attorney, was sketching a complex geometric pattern on his legal pad. He looked bored. It was a tactic. Judge Halloway, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, looked down at Greaves. "Get to the point, Counselor. We are not performing Hamlet here." "The point, Your Honor," Greaves said, slamming a hand on the railing, "is that the defendant, Hazel Winfield, is in possession of assets that were fraudulently obtained. The Willow estate was purchased with funds that Arthur and Patricia Winfield entrusted to the late Elias Winfield for safekeeping. It was a family trust, intended for the care of the entire family. Hazel manipulated her grandfather, a man in cognitive decline, to siphon those funds for her own selfish use. I felt a muscle in my jaw twitch. The lie was so bold, so completely fabricated, that it was almost impressive. My father took the stand first. He wore a cardigan I had never seen before, something threadbare and humble, likely purchased at a thrift store specifically for this performance. He wiped his eyes. "We gave Dad Elias everything we had," Arthur sobbed. $200,000 in cash over 10 years. We told him, "Keep this safe for the grandkids." We didn't trust the banks. We trusted him. And Hazel was always over there, whispering in his ear, changing the paperwork. We never thought our own daughter would steal our retirement. I looked at the judge. She was taking notes. Her expression was unreadable, but I could see the slight furrow of her brow as she looked at me. To her, I was the cold, stone-faced corporate woman in a tailored suit, while my father was the weeping, broken elderly man. The optics were terrible. Vance leaned over to me. "Do you want to object?" "No," I whispered. "Let them dig the hole deeper." My silence was a calculated risk. In my line of work, you learn that liars hate silence. They feel the need to fill it, and the more they talk, the more they contradict themselves. But in a courtroom, silence can also look like arrogance. I could feel the eyes of the court reporter on me. I could feel the judgment. My mother took the stand next. She was even more dramatic. She claimed that I had promised to let them live in the Willow estate years ago. She claimed that the purchase of the house was a family project, that I had merely executed on paper. "She told us it was our house," Patricia cried, clutching a handkerchief. She said, "Mom, Dad, this is for all of us. And now she leaves us to freeze." Listening to them, I felt a strange sensation. It was not anger, it was a memory, sharp and visceral, pulling me back 10 years. Flashback. It was a Tuesday in August. 10 years ago, I was 22, just out of college, visiting Grandpa Elias at his small cottage, the one he lived in before he moved into the hospice wing. The air smelled of his cherry pipe tobacco and old leather. I was in the kitchen making tea when the front door banged open. It was Arthur, my father. I had stayed hidden in the kitchen, listening. "I need 50,000. Dad," Arthur had shouted. "It is a sure thing, a boat dealership in Florida. Tyler and I are going to run it." "No," Elias's voice had been weak but hard as granite. "I gave you money for the restaurant. You failed. I gave you money for the car wash. You failed. You have drained me dry." "Arthur, you are a selfish old man," Arthur had screamed. "You are sitting on a pile of cash and you won't help your own son." "I am not helping you. I am enabling you," Elias had said. "And I am done, as of today. Arthur, you are cut off. Not a penny more. Not now. And not in my will." There was a sound of glass breaking. Arthur had thrown a vase. "You can't do that. Think of the shame. What will people say if you disown me?" "I won't tell them," Elias had said quietly. "I will keep your secret. Arthur, I will let you pretend you are a dutiful son, and I am a loving father. But know this, the well is dry. The money goes to the one person in this family who knows the value of $1. It goes to Hazel." Arthur had stormed out, oblivious to my presence in the kitchen. I had walked into the living room to find Grandpa Elias shaking, clutching his chest. "You heard that?" he had asked. "Yes," I had said. "Good," he had whispered. "Remember it. Because one day, they will rewrite history. You will need to be the one to correct the record." End flashback. Ms. Winfield. The judge's voice snapped me back to the present. "Your counsel may cross-examine." Vance stood up. He did not shout. He did not wave his arms. He simply walked to the podium and placed a single sheet of paper on the projector. Mr. Winfield, Vance said, addressing my father. You claim you gave your father $200,000 in cash over 10 years. Yes, Arthur said, sticking his chin out. Cash, under the table, to avoid complications. Interesting, Vance said, because I have here your tax returns for the last decade. In 7 of those 10 years, you reported a net income of less than $30,000. You were claiming unemployment benefits for 3 of those years. Are you telling this court that you managed to save $200,000 while claiming poverty to the government? Arthur froze. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. Well, we scrimped. We saved. Or, Vance said, swapping the document for another one. Are you lying about the source of the funds? Because I have here a forensic trace of the funds used to purchase the Willow estate. Vance looked at me. I nodded. The down payment for the Willow estate was made 5 years ago in the amount of $700,000, Vance stated. This money did not come from Elias Winfield. It came from a bonus payout from the firm of Sterling and Hart, awarded to Hazel Winfield for her role in the recovery of assets in the case of State versus McKinnon. Vance projected the check. It was clearly marked pay to the order of Hazel Winfield. Memo performance bonus / asset recovery commission. And the monthly mortgage payments, Vance continued, paid directly from Ms. Winfield's salary account. We have 5 years of bank statements here. Your Honor, there is not a single deposit from Arthur, Patricia, or Elias Winfield into these accounts. The math is absolute. Hazel bought the house. Hazel paid for the house. Hazel owns the house. The courtroom was silent. My father looked pale. Greaves, the opposing lawyer, looked frantic, rifling through his messy papers. Judge Holloway adjusted her glasses. Mr. Greaves, do you have any evidence that contradicts these bank statements? Real evidence, not anecdotes. Yes. It was not Greaves who spoke. It was Tyler. He stood up from the gallery, ignoring the bailiff who moved to intercept him. He was holding a piece of paper, waving it like a flag. I have proof, Tyler shouted. She is lying. She tricked us. Sit down, sir, the judge barked. Your Honor, please, Greaves interjected, grabbing the paper from Tyler. My client has just provided a crucial piece of evidence. It was misplaced until now. Greaves handed the paper to the bailiff, who handed it to the judge. Vance and I were given a copy. I looked at the document. It was a printout of an email chain, from Hazel Winfield to Arthur Winfield. Date September 12th, 2021. Subject, The Deal, Mom. Dad, I know the house is technically yours, but if you let me put the deed in my name for tax purposes, I promise I will take care of you forever. I will housing the whole family. In exchange, just sign over the deed to the lakeside plot in Wisconsin to me. I stared at the paper. The formatting was slightly off. The font on the header did not match the body text perfectly, and the content was laughable. This is a forgery, I said, my voice cutting through the room. It looks very real to me, Greaves sneered. It proves intent. It proves a verbal contract. You promised to house them in exchange for land. What land? I asked. We do not own land in Wisconsin. We did, Arthur shouted from the stand. We sold it to you. You hid the records. The judge looked at the email, then at me. The doubt was back in her eyes. It is the problem with well-executed lies. They plant a seed that facts take time to uproot. Ms. Winfield, the judge said. Did you send this email? No, Your Honor, I said firmly. I have never owned a plot of land in Wisconsin. This email is a fabrication. The metadata will prove it. Then we will need time to examine the metadata. The judge ruled. I am not making a ruling on the asset division today. This court is adjourned for 72 hours to allow for digital forensic analysis of this new evidence. She banged her gavel. 72 hours, Tyler shouted triumphantly as I packed up my bag. You are done. Hazel, you are going to jail for perjury. I walked out of the courtroom with Vance. He was furious. It is a delay tactic, Vance muttered. They know it is fake. They just want to drag this out, hoping the bad press will force you to settle. Tyler created that email, I said, my mind racing. He probably used a template he found online. He is not smart enough to scrub the digital signature, but 72 hours is enough time for him to try something stupid. Go home, Vance said. Lock your doors. Do not engage with them. I will get my tech guys on this email. We will rip it apart. I drove home in the rain. The windshield wipers beat a rhythm against the glass liar. Liar, liar. When I reached the Willow estate, the sun had set. The house looked imposing in the dark, a silhouette of stone against a purple sky. I drove through the gates and parked in the garage. I did not turn on the lights in the main house. Instead, I went straight to the security room in the basement. I had upgraded the system 3 years ago. It had night vision, motion sensors, and thermal imaging. I sat in the chair, watching the monitors. The green glow of the screens illuminated my face. 1 hour passed, then 2. At 2:14 in the morning, a motion sensor on the south perimeter tripped. I leaned forward. On screen 4, a figure was moving through the high grass near the old garden wall. It was wearing a dark hoodie, but the gait was unmistakable. It was the swagger of a man who thought he was smarter than he was. Tyler. He was carrying a backpack. He reached the back door, the servant's entrance. He pulled something out of his pocket, a lockpick set. Number Tyler didn't have the patience for that. It was a crowbar. He jammed the crowbar into the frame of the door. I did not call the police, not yet. I watched. He heaved against the wood. The door did not budge. It was reinforced steel with a wood veneer, installed specifically for this kind of threat. He cursed. I could see his breath fogging in the cold air. He moved to the window. He smashed the glass with the crowbar. Crash. The alarm was silent inside the house, but it alerted the monitoring station instantly. I had asked them to delay the dispatch for 3 minutes. I needed him to enter the house. I needed clear proof of wrongdoing, trespassing, unlawful entry, damage to the property. He made his way through the shattered window, scraping his hand on a piece of glass, and landed in the kitchen. He took a flashlight from his pocket and slowly scanned the room. He was searching for something in particular. He headed toward the library, convinced that was where it would be. He believed that if he could locate the deed, the original will, or whatever documents he imagined were there, he could get rid of them. He assumed physical paperwork was all that mattered. He didn't realize I had converted everything into digital form years earlier. When he reached the library, he went straight to the desk, pulling open drawers and scattering papers across the floor. He was agitated, breathing heavily. "Where is it?" I heard him whisper through the concealed microphone I had placed inside the bookshelf. "Where is the damn money?" He wasn't looking for evidence to save our parents. He was looking for cash. He thought I kept stacks of money in the house, just like Grandpa used to. I pressed a button on the console. The lights in the library flooded on, blindingly bright. Tyler spun around, shielding his eyes, the crowbar raised in a defensive posture. "Hello, Tyler," I said into the microphone. My voice boomed through the room from the hidden speakers. He looked around wildly. "Hazel, where are you? Come out and face me." "I am facing you," I said calmly. "Look at the bookshelf, 3rd shelf from the top. The red light." He looked. He saw the camera. His face went pale. "You are recording this," he whispered. "In 4K resolution," I confirmed. "You just broke into a home. You are armed with a weapon. You are currently violating your bail conditions, and you are attempting to rob the primary witness in a civil suit against you." I just wanted to talk. He stammered, lowering the crowbar. "I wanted to negotiate. You smashed a window," I said. "That is not negotiation. That is a felony." I picked up my phone. "The police are already en route. Tyler, they will be at the gate in 2 minutes. If I were you, I would drop the crowbar and get on the ground, because if you move toward the stairs, I will activate the internal lockdown, and you will be trapped in that room until they drag you out." Tyler looked at the camera. For the first time, I saw the true depth of his fear. The arrogance was gone. The Golden Prince mask had shattered. He was just a thief in a hoodie. Caught in a beam of light he could not escape. He dropped the crowbar. It clattered loudly on the hardwood floor. He sank to his knees, putting his hands on his head. "Please," he sobbed. "Hazel, please, do not do this." "I did not do this," I said, my voice devoid of pity. "You did. You bet against the wrong accountant." I watched on the screen as the red and blue lights of the police cruisers flashed against the library windows. I took a sip of water. The trap was sprung. The evidence of the fake email would be disproven by the forensic team. But this was the nail in the coffin. I saved the footage. I backed it up to 3 different cloud servers. Then, I stood up to go meet the officers at the door. It was going to be a long night. But for the first time in months, I felt perfectly rested. The police lights had faded into the distance hours ago, taking my brother Tyler away in the back of a squad car for breaking and entering. The silence that returned to the Willow estate was heavy, but it was not empty. It was pregnant with anticipation. I did not go to sleep. My adrenaline was a cold, humming engine in my veins. I went back to the library, the scene of Tyler's desperate, failed crime. The glass from the broken window glittered on the hardwood floor like diamonds, but I ignored it. I walked to the large oil painting of Grandpa Elias that hung above the fireplace. He looked down at me, his eyes painted with a mischievous twinkle that the artist had captured perfectly. I remembered the letter Mr. Vance had given me yesterday, the one attached to the summons. It was a copy of a sealed codicil, an addition to the will that only Vance and I knew about. When the wolves are at the door. Hazel, look to the roots of the family tree. It was a riddle. But Grandpa Elias was not a poet. He was a pragmatist. The family tree he referred to was not metaphorical. It was the literal carving on the wooden mantelpiece below his portrait. The central design was a sprawling oak tree with deep roots intricately carved into the mahogany. I knelt before the fireplace. I ran my fingers over the carved roots. There, hidden in the texture of the wood, was a small knot that felt slightly loose. I pressed it. A click echoed in the quiet room. A panel in the wainscoting to the right of the fireplace popped open just an inch. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled the panel back. Behind it was a steel wall safe, old but impenetrable. The combination was the date of my grandmother's birth. I dialed it in. Right to 19, left to 42, right to 7. The heavy steel door swung open with a groan of well-oiled hinges. Inside, there was no stack of cash. There were no gold bars. Tyler would have been disappointed, but to me, the contents were more valuable than the entire gold reserve of Fort Knox. There was a single thick folder labeled in Grandpa's handwriting, the Omega file. I pulled it out and sat on the floor, surrounded by the shattered glass of the window, and began to read. The first few pages were expected logs of small thefts. Arthur taking $500 here, Patricia charging a spa weekend to Grandpa's card there. But as I turned the pages, the numbers grew. The dates became more recent. And then, I found it, the smoking gun. The document that would turn the upcoming court case from a defensive battle into a slaughter. It was a legal agreement, notarized and signed on May 12, 2018. I read the text, my breath catching in my throat. Agreement of renunciation and settlement. I, Arthur Winfield, and I, Patricia Winfield, hereby acknowledge the receipt of $500,000 in cash from Elias Winfield. In exchange for this sum, we voluntarily and irrevocably renounce any and all future claims, rights, or interests in the estate of Elias Winfield, including but not limited to the property known as the Willow Estate and any financial trusts. Reason for disbursement: emergency legal defense and settlement funds for Tyler Winfield regarding the Miami incident. I stared at the paper. The Miami incident. I remembered that year. Tyler had disappeared to Florida for 6 months to start a nightclub. He had come back quietly, claiming the business climate was not right. We never knew the truth. I flipped to the attached police report in the file. Tyler had not just failed at business. He had been involved in a hit-and-run while driving under the influence. He had injured a pedestrian. The $500,000 was not an investment. It was go-away money. It was used to pay off the victim's family for a civil settlement and to hire a high-powered attorney to get the criminal charges dismissed on a technicality. My parents had sold their birthright and mine. They thought to keep their golden boy out of prison 8 years ago. They had signed away everything. They had swallowed $500,000 of Grandpa's money to cover up Tyler's crime, and they had agreed, in writing, that they would never ask for another cent. And now that they had burned through that money and lost their own, they were suing me, claiming I stole the inheritance they had already sold. "You greedy fools," I whispered to the empty room. "You signed your own death warrants." They thought this document was destroyed. They thought Grandpa Elias, in his soft-heartedness, would have burned it to protect the family name. They did not know he had filed it away in the Omega file. Waiting for the day they would try to bite the hand that fed them, I closed the file. I did not need to sleep. I needed to make a phone call, but not to my lawyer, not yet. I needed to sever the last limb of their support system. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I sat in a booth at a small, out-of-the-way coffee shop on the edge of town. I wore dark sunglasses and a scarf. 10 minutes later, Bianca walked in. She looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen, her skin pale. She wore a coat that looked expensive from a distance but was fraying at the cuffs. She looked around nervously before sliding into the booth opposite me. "Is he still in jail?" she asked, her voice a hoarse whisper. "He is being arraigned this morning," I said, sipping my black coffee. "The judge will likely set bail high given he was already out on bond for the fraud charges. He will not be coming home today. Bianca." She put her face in her hands. "God, what am I going to do? The motel is paid up until tomorrow. After that Hazel, we have nothing." "You have nothing," I corrected her. "Tyler, however, seems to have had quite a bit of discretionary spending money recently." She looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "We are broke. You know that. We lost the penthouse." I reached into my bag and pulled out a secondary file I had compiled not from the Omega file, but from my own investigation over the last 48 hours. My private investigator had been very thorough. "Tyler told you he was investing the last of the family savings into marketing for Titancoin, right?" I asked. "Yes," she nodded. "He said we had to spend money to make money. That is why we couldn't pay the mortgage." I slid a bank statement across the table. It was for an account under the name T.W. Consulting. "Look at the transactions. Bianca, look at the dates." She looked. Her finger traced the lines. The Sapphire Lounge, $300. Hotel LeBlanc, $450. Tiffany & Company, $1,200. Venmo transfer to Candy_Lax, $500. "Who is Candy?" Bianca whispered, her hand trembling. "Her real name is Jessica," I said. "She is a bottle service girl at a club downtown. Tyler has been seeing her for 6 months. While you were packing boxes to move out of the penthouse, Tyler was buying her a diamond tennis bracelet. That transaction right there. That was 2 days before you guys showed up at my doorstep claiming you were starving." Bianca stared at the paper. The color drained from her face until she looked like a ghost. "He told me that money was for legal fees," she choked out. "He told me he was fighting for our future." "He was fighting for his ego," I said ruthlessly. "He has a mistress. Bianca, he has been spending the diaper money, the food money, the rent money on another woman while you defended him to the press, while you stood by him in that video and lied about me." Tears spilled onto the paper, smearing the ink of the damning numbers. "I didn't know," she sobbed. "I swear, Hazel, I didn't know about her. I thought we were a team against the world." "You are not a team," I said. "You are his shield. He uses you to look like a family man so the judge will go easy on him. He uses you to guilt-trip our parents, and the moment he doesn't need you, he will discard you." I leaned forward. This was the moment, the pivot point. "I can help you, Bianca." She looked up, her eyes red and desperate. "How you hate us." "I hate him," I said, and I despise what my parents have become. But you are just a casualty, and those children are innocent. I placed a business card on the table. It was for a family law attorney, a shark named Sarah Jenkins who owed me a favor. I have arranged a consultation for you with Ms. Jenkins, I said. She specializes in divorce and full custody for spouses of financial criminals. I will pay her retainer. I have also secured a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park. It is fully furnished. The rent is paid for 6 months. Bianca's mouth fell open. 6 months, Lincoln Park. That is thousands of dollars. Consider it an investment in my niece and nephew, I said. I want them away from Tyler. I want them away from my toxic parents. I want them to have a chance. What do you want in return? She asked. She was learning. Nothing is free. I want the truth, I said. I want you to go to the district attorney. I want you to testify that Tyler forged that email about the Wisconsin land deal. I want you to tell them he sat at his laptop and photoshopped it while you watched. Bianca hesitated. If I do that, he goes to prison for a long time. Perjury, forgery, plus the breaking and entering. He is going to prison anyway. Bianca, I said softly, the only question is, are you going to go down with him as an accomplice, or are you going to be the mother who saved her children? I tapped the bank statement where the transfer to Candy was highlighted in neon yellow. Does he deserve your loyalty? I asked. She looked at the statement one last time. She looked at the transaction for the hotel room, dated the night she was up all night nursing Olivia through a fever. Her expression hardened. The sadness evaporated, replaced by the cold fury of a woman scorned. No, she said. He does not. She reached out and took the lawyer's card. She took the keys to the apartment that I slid across the table. I will testify, she said. I will tell them everything. The email, the hidden accounts I found on his phone, all of it. Good, I said. Go to the apartment now. Get the kids. Do not tell my parents where you are going. Just leave. What about the hearing? She asked. The one regarding the assets. Leave that to me. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. I have a surprise for them. I left Bianca at the coffee shop and drove back to the estate. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from a neighborhood watch app I monitored, a fake account I used to keep tabs on the gossip. I saw a post from my mother. Patricia Winfield. It was a digital invitation. Victory party. Come celebrate the Winfield family's return to glory. Location, the Willow Estate. 142 Blackwood Lane. Date. Next Saturday. Details. We are reclaiming our rightful home. Justice will be served. Champagne and hors d'oeuvres will be served in the East Wing. I laughed out loud in my car. It was a rich, throaty sound that surprised me. They were so delusional, so drunk on their own narrative, that they were planning a party in my house. They truly believed that the forged email and their sob story would sway the judge. They thought Tyler's arrest was just a hiccup, a misunderstanding that would be cleared up once they explained things. They did not know I had the Omega file. They did not know I had Bianca. They were planning a coronation, unaware that they were walking straight into an execution. I pulled into my driveway. The broken window was already being repaired by a glazier I had called. The house stood tall and impregnable. I walked into the kitchen and made myself a sandwich. I ate it with relish. Then I called Mr. Vance. Arthur, I said when he answered. I found it. The Omega file. Is it as bad as we thought? He asked. It is worse, I said. It contains a signed renunciation of inheritance from 2018. They took cash to cover up a hit and run for Tyler. Vance whistled low on the other end of the line. That is checkmate. Hazel. That is absolute checkmate. If we present that, not only do they lose the lawsuit, but the district attorney might reopen the hit-and-run case. Prepare the filings, I said, but do not submit them just yet. Why not? Because, I said, looking at the screenshot of my mother's party invitation. They are planning a celebration. I want to let them have their moment of hope. I want them to walk into that courtroom thinking they have won, and then I want to watch the light go out of their eyes when I drop the hammer. "You are a cold woman, Hazel," Vance said, but I could hear the admiration in his voice. "I am a Winfield," I replied. "I learned from the best." I hung up the phone. The game had turned, the pieces were moving, and for the first time in 32 years, I was not the pawn, I was the queen. And the board was about to be cleared. The glow of the iPad screen was the only light in my kitchen as I poured myself a glass of vintage Pinot Noir. It was a 2019 bottle, earthy and complex, much like the situation I was currently observing. On the screen, a live stream was broadcasting to 3,000 viewers. The title of the stream was Clickbait Perfection: The Truth About the Willow Estate. A Family Betrayed. My brother, Tyler, was sitting on the edge of a bed in a motel room that had seen better decades. He was wearing a fresh shirt likely stolen or bought on a credit card that was hours away from being declined, and he had managed to cover the bruises from his arrest with stage makeup. Beside him sat my mother, Patricia, looking frail and tragic in a way that required significant effort to maintain. My father, Arthur, stood behind them like a grim sentinel of injustice. "We love Hazel," my mother was saying to the camera, wiping a non-existent tear from her cheek. "We truly do. That is why this is so hard for us. We did not want to make this public, but we have no choice. We are worried about her safety." I took a sip of wine. The audacity was breathtaking. Tyler leaned into the camera, his face a mask of faux concern. "My sister has been struggling with mental health issues for a long time," he lied smoothly. "This obsession with hoarding wealth, this paranoia that her own family is out to get her, it is a symptom. We have consulted with experts who believe she is suffering from a delusionary break. She is not fit to manage the estate. She is not fit to live alone in that massive house." I watched the comments roll in. "Poor family. She sounds dangerous. Conservatorship might be the only way to save her." "We are filing a petition," Tyler continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Not for the money. God, no. We don't care about the money. We are filing for guardianship. We want to take the burden off Hazel's shoulders. We want to manage the assets for her so she can get the help she needs in a specialized facility." I set the wine glass down on the marble counter. They were not just trying to steal my house anymore. They were trying to erase my personhood. They were attempting to use the legal system to declare me incompetent, lock me away, and seize control of the trust under the guise of benevolence. It was the nuclear option. It was also a fatal strategic error. They were projecting their own desperation onto me. They assumed that because I was quiet, I was weak. They assumed that because I was a woman living alone, I was vulnerable to the hysterical spinster narrative. I minimized the live stream window and opened my secure email client. I had spent the last 2 days analyzing the data I had scraped from Tyler's laptop before the police seized it, a mirror copy I had made remotely when he foolishly connected to my guest Wi-Fi during his attempted break-in. He thought he was hacking me. In reality, he had walked into a digital spiderweb. I drafted an email. The recipient was the Internal Revenue Service, specifically the Criminal Investigation Division. Subject: whistleblower complaint regarding unreported income and crypto asset laundering. Tyler Winfield /T. W. Consulting. I attached the files. It was a beautiful, comprehensive autopsy of his financial life. I highlighted the offshore transfers. I highlighted the consulting fees that were actually payouts from the Ponzi scheme. I highlighted the $500,000 in cash my parents had given him in 2018, which he had never declared as a gift or income, and which he had subsequently laundered through a shell company in Delaware. "Send," I whispered. The progress bar zipped across the screen. Done. But I was not finished. I opened a second tab. This one was for the local process server. A man named Mike who prided himself on his speed. Target: Arthur and Patricia Winfield. Location: Motel 6, room 114. Documents to be served: civil suit for defamation of character, civil suit for credit fraud, regarding the attempted loan in the name of Hazel Winfield. I hit send on that one too. I watched the live stream for a few more minutes. Tyler was now answering questions from the chat. Yes, he was saying. We tried to reason with her, but she just attacked us. She actually set the police on me when I went there to check on her welfare. Can you believe that I go to see if my sister is okay, and she has me arrested? The level of delusion was almost impressive. He had convinced himself of his own lie. He genuinely believed he was the hero of this story. I closed the iPad. The time for digital warfare was over. It was time to look them in the eye. I sent a text message to Mr. Vance. Set up the meeting. Tomorrow morning. Tell them I am ready to discuss the settlement. They would interpret settlement as surrender. They would think their live stream had scared me. They would walk into that room expecting a check. The next morning, the conference room at Vance's law firm was freezing. Vance liked to keep the temperature low. He said it kept people awake. I sat at the far end of the long mahogany table, my hands folded in my lap. I wore a navy blue suit, sharp and tailored. I wore no jewelry except for a small watch. The door opened, and the circus arrived. My parents walked in first. They were beaming. My mother had done her hair. My father was wearing a tie. They looked like they were arriving at a coronation. Tyler followed them, strutting. Despite the ankle monitor that bulged under his jeans, he looked at me with a smirk that dripped with condescension. Mr. Greaves, their ambulance-chasing lawyer, brought up the rear, carrying a briefcase that looked like it was made of cardboard. Hazel, my mother said, sitting down opposite me. She didn't say hello. She just sighed, a sound of long-suffering patience. I am glad you finally came to your senses. The live stream really got people talking, didn't it? It is amazing what public pressure can do. We are willing to be generous, my father added. Leaning back in his chair, we know you are sick. Hazel, we forgive you. Once we sign the guardianship papers, we will find you a lovely facility, maybe near the lake, and we will move into the Willow estate to manage the upkeep. It is a win-win. Tyler placed his phone on the table. Face up. I just want you to get help, sis. That is all I ever wanted. Vance cleared his throat. He was sitting next to me, reviewing a document. He did not look up. There will be no guardianship, I said softly. The room went quiet. Excuse me, Greaves sputtered. We were under the impression. I am not here to surrender, I interrupted. I am here to offer you one last chance to avoid prison. Tyler laughed. It was a loud, barking sound. Prison, Hazel. You are the one who is going to be committed. We have the public on our side. We have the narrative. You are the crazy recluse who stole Grandpa's money. Did I asked. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small digital audio recorder. It was old, a relic from 10 years ago. Grandpa Elias had used it to record his dictations. Grandpa Elias was not senile, I said. He was tired, but he was sharp, and he knew you better than you knew yourselves. He recorded every conversation he had in that house during the last year of his life. My mother's smile faltered. That is illegal. You cannot record people without consent. In Illinois, it is a two-party consent state, Vance interceded, finally looking up. However, there is an exception when the recording captures evidence of a crime, or when the recording is made in a dwelling where the expectation of privacy is waived by specific prior written agreement which, if you recall, Elias made all visitors sign in his guest book starting in 2015. Bluff, Tyler sneered. Play it. Let us hear the ghost. I pressed play. The audio was slightly grainy, but the voices were unmistakable. Date May 12th, 2018. Arthur's voice. Just sign the damn check. Old man Tyler needs the lawyer by Monday, or they are going to charge him with a felony DUI. Elias's voice. $500,000. That is half the estate. Arthur, that is Hazel's share. Patricia's voice. Oh, forget about Hazel. She is a bean counter. She likes being poor. She doesn't need money. She has her little job. Tyler has a future. He is going to be a star. We cannot let a little accident ruin his life. Arthur's voice. After you die. Hazel won't get a dime anyway. We will make sure of that. We will contest the will. We will say you were crazy. So you might as well give us the money now while you are alive to see Tyler thank you. Elias's voice. If I give you this money, you sign the renunciation. You sign away everything. The house. The trust. Everything. Patricia's voice. Fine. We don't want the house. It is a drafty old barn. Just give us the cash. Who cares about the house? Hazel can have the pile of bricks for all I care. She will probably die alone in it. Click. I stopped the recording. The silence in the room was absolute. It was heavier than the stone walls of my estate. My mother's face had drained of all color. She looked like a wax statue that was beginning to melt. My father was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles were white. Tyler was the first to speak. He stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. That is fake, he shouted. His voice was high, pitched with panic. That is you generated that. You can do that now. Deepfakes. It is a digital tape from 2018, I said calmly. The forensic metadata is embedded in the file. It predates the technology you are talking about, and we have the physical document you signed that day. The renunciation agreement. Vance slid a photocopy of the signed agreement across the table. My father looked at the paper. He saw his own signature. He saw the date. We forgot, my father whispered. You forgot. You sold your birthright for $500,000, I asked. You forgot you traded my future to keep Tyler out of jail. It was an emergency, my mother shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. You don't understand. We did what we had to do to save the family. You saved one member of the family, I corrected her. And you sacrificed the other. And then, when the money ran out, you came back to feast on the carcass of the one you discarded. This doesn't prove anything, Greaves stammered, though he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. It is an old contract. It might not be binding. It is binding, Vance said, his voice like a steel trap snapping shut. But that is not the problem you should be worried about. Vance stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the Chicago skyline. Tomorrow is the hearing, Vance said. We were scheduled for family court, a simple civil matter. He turned back to face them. However, in light of the attempted burglary, the evidence of credit fraud, and the newly discovered evidence of extortion against a senior citizen, that being the recording of you forcing Elias to sign a check under duress, the nature of tomorrow's proceedings has changed. What do you mean? Tyler asked. He was sweating now. The makeup was starting to run. I mean that I have shared this recording, and the Omega file, with the district attorney, I said. My mother gasped. You wouldn't? I did, I said. Yesterday, along with the tip to the IRS. The district attorney will be present at the hearing tomorrow, Vance continued. Not as a spectator, but to determine if immediate indictments should be handed down. This is no longer about who gets the house, Arthur. This is about how many years you're going to spend in a federal penitentiary. My father slumped in his chair. He looked small. He looked defeated. But my mother was made of stronger, more toxic stuff. She stood up, trembling with rage. You ungrateful witch, she hissed. We gave you life. We fed you. And this is how you repay us, by sending your own family to prison. You tried to have me committed, I said, meeting her gaze without flinching. You tried to take away my freedom because you were too lazy to work for your own. You broke the social contract of family a long time ago. Mom, I am just enforcing the penalties. We will fight this, Tyler said. Though his voice lacked conviction, we will tell the press the recording is fake. We will keep posting. Go ahead, I said. Post all you want. But remember, the IRS is auditing you as we speak. Every time you post a video from a new phone, they are wondering where you got the money to buy it. Every time you wear a nice shirt, they are adding it to the ledger. I stood up and smoothed my suit. We are done here, I said. I will see you in court tomorrow. Bring a toothbrush. You might not be going back to the motel." I walked out of the room. I did not look back. But as the door closed behind me, I heard the sound I had been waiting for. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a curse. It was the sound of my family turning on each other. "You said they wouldn't have records," I heard my father yell at my mother. "You said you burned the agreement," she screamed back. "Shut up. Both of you shut up," Tyler roared. I walked down the hallway, the sound of their self-destruction fading behind me. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. I checked my phone. One new email from Bianca. "I am ready. I have the documents. I will be there." The stage was set. The players were in position. Tomorrow, the curtain would fall on the House of Winfield. And I would be the one holding the rope. The courtroom doors swung open with a heavy, ominous thud that echoed through the high-ceilinged chamber. It was 9 o'clock in the morning on a rainy Tuesday. But inside courtroom 4B, the atmosphere was electric with the artificial heat of television lights. My parents had kept their promise to turn this into a spectacle. They had tipped off every local news outlet, and the back 2 rows of the gallery were packed with reporters, sketch artists, and bloggers. My father, Arthur, sat at the plaintiff's table wearing a suit that was clearly new, likely purchased with the last dregs of credit he had managed to scrape together, or perhaps charged to the tab of his lawyer. Mr. Greaves. He looked solemn, the picture of an aggrieved patriarch. Beside him, my mother, Patricia, was dressed in muted gray, a color chosen to evoke sympathy. She dabbed at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief before the judge even entered the room. Tyler sat on the end, tapping his foot rhythmically against the floor leg of the table. He looked nervous, his eyes darting toward the doors every few seconds. He was expecting his wife. He was expecting his support system. I sat at the defense table, my spine pressed against the hard wood of the chair. Mr. Vance, my attorney, arranged his papers with the slow, deliberate movements of a man who knows he is holding a royal flush. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. Judge Holloway swept into the room, her black robes billowing. She looked tired. She looked like a woman who had spent the last 72 hours reading very disturbing documents and had very little patience left for theatrics. "Be seated," she commanded. The room shuffled and settled. "We are back on the record in the matter of Winfield versus Winfield," Judge Holloway said, adjusting her glasses. When we adjourned, the court was waiting on the verification of digital evidence submitted by the plaintiff. However, I understand the defense has filed several new motions and submitted new physical evidence this morning. "We have, Your Honor," Vance said, standing up, and the judge looked toward the back of the room. "I see we have a late arrival." The double doors opened again. The room turned. Tyler twisted in his seat, a smile forming on his lips as he expected to see Bianca rushing to his side to hold his hand and glare at me. It was Bianca, but she was not rushing. She walked into the courtroom with her head held high. She was wearing a simple black dress and a coat I recognized. It was one I had bought for her yesterday. She did not look at the cameras. She did not look at the reporters. And most devastatingly, she did not look at Tyler. She walked straight past the plaintiff's table. "B," Tyler whispered, half rising from his chair. "Bianca, over here." She ignored him. She walked through the gate that separated the gallery from the legal arena. She walked past the stunned silence of my parents, and she sat down in the chair directly behind me. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The reporters began scribbling furiously. "Bianca," my mother hissed, forgetting her role as the grieving victim for a split second. "What are you doing? Get over here." "Order." Judge Holloway slammed her gavel. "Ms. Winfield-in-law is free to sit wherever she chooses. Mr. Greaves, control your clients." Tyler sank back into his chair. His face was a mask of pure confusion, which was slowly curdling into fear. He looked at me, and I offered him a small, cold nod. "Mr. Vance," the judge said. "Proceed." "Thank you, Your Honor," Vance said. He walked to the center of the room. "We move to dismiss all claims made by the plaintiffs regarding the ownership of the Willow estate and any demand for spousal or parental support. We base this motion on 3 pieces of irrefutable evidence. Vance picked up the first document. It was the original renunciation agreement from 2018. Exhibit A, Vance announced, a contractual agreement signed by Arthur and Patricia Winfield on May 12, 2018. In this document, they voluntarily and irrevocably renounced all future claims to the estate of Elias Winfield in exchange for a cash payment of $500,000. Mr. Greaves jumped up. Objection. We have not authenticated. Sit down. Mr. Greaves. The judge cut him off sharply. My clerks have already verified the notary seal and the signatures against the samples provided by the state archives. The document is genuine. She looked at my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Winfield, did you sign this document? My father stood up, his hands shaking. Your Honor, we were under duress. My father forced us. Forced you to take $500,000, the judge asked, her eyebrow raising. That is a very curious form of torture, Mr. Winfield. Most people would call that a lottery win. It was for Tyler, my mother blurted out. We had to save him. It does not count. It counts, the judge said icily. You sold your inheritance. You spent the money. You cannot sell a car and then come back 5 years later demanding to drive it because you spent the cash on bad investments. The claim regarding the estate is dismissed with prejudice. My parents slumped. The first pillar of their attack had crumbled. But Tyler still had his trump card, or so he thought. What about the email? Tyler shouted, standing up again. She promised us land in Wisconsin. That is a verbal contract she owes us. Ah, yes, Vance said. The email. He turned to the bench. Your Honor, regarding the alleged email from my client promising land in exchange for housing, we would like to call a witness to the stand to testify regarding the provenance of this document. We call Mrs. Bianca Winfield. Tyler froze. He looked at his wife. Bianca, no. Don't. Bianca stood up. She walked to the witness stand. She placed her hand on the Bible. She swore to tell the truth. Mrs. Winfield, Vance asked gently, do you recognize the document labeled Plaintiff's Exhibit B, the email printout? I do, Bianca said. Her voice was quiet but steady. The microphone amplified it, carrying it to every corner of the room. Have you seen this document before? Yes, she said. I saw it on Sunday night, on Tyler's laptop. Did you see your sister-in-law, Hazel, send it? No, Bianca said. She looked directly at Tyler. I saw Tyler make it. He downloaded a template for a Gmail header. He used a photo editing program to paste the text over an old email from a newsletter. He spent about 2 hours aligning the fonts so it would look real. Liar, Tyler screamed. He lunged toward the stand, but the bailiff was there instantly, pushing him back into his chair. You are lying. She paid you. How much did she pay you? She paid for a roof over your children's heads, Bianca said, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Something you refused to do because you were too busy buying jewelry for your mistress. The courtroom erupted. The press went wild. Flashbulbs went off despite the rules against photography. Mistress, my mother whispered, turning to look at Tyler. What is she talking about? Order, order in this court. Judge Holloway banged the gavel repeatedly until the noise subsided. The witness will step down, the judge said. The court finds the testimony credible. The email evidence is stricken from the record and referred to the district attorney for investigation into perjury and fabrication of evidence. Tyler was breathing hard, his face a mottled red. He looked trapped. Finally, Judge Holloway said, picking up the thick file that sat on her desk. We come to the matter of the countersuit filed by Ms. Hazel Winfield and the evidence labeled the Omega file. She opened the folder. I have spent the last evening reviewing these documents, the judge said. Her voice lost its sharp edge and became something far more dangerous, quiet, disappointed, and disgusted. Mr. and Mrs. Winfield, she addressed my parents. In my 20 years on the bench, I have seen families fight over money, but I have rarely seen such a systematic, predatory exploitation of an elderly relative. She held up a page. Here we have a withdrawal of $10,000 for home repairs on a house that was never repaired. Here, a charge of $5,000 for a medical consultation at a luxury spa in Arizona. And here a transfer of $50,000 from Elias Winfield's dementia care fund to an account solely controlled by Arthur Winfield, dated 2 days after Elias was admitted to the hospital. The judge looked over her spectacles. You did not just spend his money. You stole the very resources intended to keep him alive and comfortable in his final days, and you did it while claiming to love him. My mother stood up. She was trembling, but not with shame. She was trembling with the rage of a narcissist who is losing control of the narrative. He was my father, she screamed. It was our money eventually anyway. We just took an advance. And Hazel, look at her. She is sitting there like a statue. She turned my father against us. She manipulated him. Ms. Winfield, the judge warned. Sit down. No, Patricia shrieked. She pointed a shaking finger at me. I gave birth to you. I went through 18 hours of labor for you. You owe me. You owe me everything you have. That house is mine because I made you. You are nothing without me. Nothing. I said sit down. The judge's voice cracked like a whip. So we sleep on the street, my mother screamed, repeating the phrase that had started this entire war. You want your mother on the street. You will not be on the street. Mrs. Winfield, the judge said coldly. The state has facilities for the indigent, should you require them, but you will certainly not be in the Willow estate. The judge looked at me. Ms. Hazel Winfield, the court finds in your favor on all counts. The suit against you is dismissed. Your countersuit for defamation is upheld. I am awarding you legal fees and damages in the amount of $50,000, to be garnished from any remaining assets the plaintiffs may possess. They have no assets, Your Honor, I said quietly. Then it will stand as a judgment against their future earnings, the judge said. Case closed. She banged the gavel. My father put his head in his hands. My mother collapsed into her chair, sobbing loudly, waiting for the cameras to zoom in on her tragedy. But the show was not over. As the gavel hit the wood, the side doors of the courtroom opened. 4 men in dark suits walked in. They were not court security. They wore blue windbreakers with yellow lettering on the back. Economic Crimes Unit. Behind them walked 2 agents who looked even more serious. They wore badges on their belts. IRS. Criminal Investigation. The silence that fell over the room was instant and terrifying. My lawyer, Vance, leaned over to me. Here it comes. The lead officer walked straight to the plaintiff's table. He did not look at my parents. He stopped in front of Tyler. Tyler Winfield, the officer asked. Tyler looked up. He looked small. He looked like a child who had broken a vase and realized he couldn't hide the pieces. Yes. I am Detective Miller with the Economic Crimes Unit. We have a warrant for your arrest. Arrest, Tyler squeaked. For what I am already out on bail. This is a federal warrant, sir. The IRS agent stepped forward. We are charging you with 4 counts of tax evasion, 2 counts of wire fraud, and 1 count of money laundering regarding the Titan Coin scheme and the concealing of assets through the shell company TW Consulting. And, Detective Miller added, pulling out a pair of handcuffs, we are also charging you with the theft of services and credit fraud related to the identity theft of Hazel Winfield. No, Tyler stammered. No, you don't understand. My sister is the one. She set me up. Stand up, sir, Miller said, grabbing Tyler's arm. Tyler yanked his arm away. Mom, Dad, do something. They are taking me. My father looked up. He looked at the police. Then he looked at me. For the first time, I saw the realization dawn on him. He saw the power I held. He saw that I had not just defended myself. I had meticulously, surgically dismantled their entire existence. Officer, my father said, his voice trembling. We didn't know. We didn't know about the taxes. You can explain that to the grand jury. Mr. Winfield, the IRS agent said, we have subpoenas for both of you as well. You are listed as beneficiaries on the laundered accounts. What? My mother stopped crying instantly. No, we are victims. Tyler said it was legal. Turn around. Hands behind your back. Miller ordered Tyler. Tyler looked at Bianca. B. Tell them we are a team. Bianca looked at him. Her eyes were dry now. She looked at the handcuffs clicking around his wrists, the metallic sound echoing in the silent room. We are not a team, Tyler, she said softly. You are the defendant. I am the witness. Tyler screamed. It was a raw, animalistic sound of pure frustration. I will kill you. I will kill all of you. Add communicating threats to the charges, Miller said to his partner as they dragged Tyler toward the door. The reporters were on their feet, cameras flashing, recording the downfall of the Golden Prince. My parents stood frozen, watching their son, their investment, their retirement plan, being hauled away in shackles. The IRS agent turned to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Winfield, do not leave the state. We will be in touch regarding the seizure of any remaining assets to pay back the investors. Remaining assets, my mother whispered. We have nothing. Then I suggest you find a public defender, the agent said, and walked away. The courtroom began to empty. The show was over. I stood up. Vance packed his briefcase. Well done, Hazel, he said quietly. I walked toward the exit. I had to pass the plaintiff's table. My mother looked up at me. Her makeup was ruined. Her eyes were wild. She looked old. Are you happy? She rasped. You destroyed your family. Are you happy now? I stopped. I looked at her, and then I looked at the empty chair where Tyler had been. I looked at Bianca, who was hugging her lawyer in relief. I didn't destroy this family. Mom, I said. I just turned on the lights. The rot was there long before I bought the house. Where will we go? My father asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Hazel, please, we have nowhere. I reached into my purse. I pulled out a pamphlet I had picked up from the court lobby. I placed it on the table in front of them. Cook County Homeless Prevention Hotline. They open at 8 a.m., I said. I hear the queue starts early. I turned and walked out of the courtroom. The heavy doors swung shut behind me, muffling the sound of my mother's renewed wailing. I walked down the marble hallway, my heels clicking on the floor. I walked out into the rain, took a deep breath of the cold, wet air, and felt the tight knot in my chest finally, truly unravel. It was done. The numbers balanced. The account was closed. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting tight is a specific, mechanical noise that cuts through a room sharper than a knife. It is the sound of consequences arriving, cold and metallic. I stood by the defense table, watching the economic crimes detectives haul my brother out of his chair. Tyler was not going quietly. He was thrashing, his expensive shoes skidding on the courtroom floor, his face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. Mom! Dad! Tyler screamed, his voice cracking. Do not let them take me. Call the lawyer. Call someone, fix this. He turned his head, his eyes locking onto my parents, who were standing frozen by their table. He was waiting for the miracle. He was waiting for the checkbook to open, for the phone call to the senator, for the safety net that had caught him every single time he had fallen for 35 years. But there was no net. There was only the hard, unforgiving floor of reality. We can't, my father wailed, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides. We don't have the money. Tyler, they froze the accounts. You promised, Tyler shrieked, as the detectives shoved him toward the side exit. You said you would fix it. You said I was the golden boy. The doors banged open, and then slammed shut. His screaming was cut off abruptly, leaving a ringing silence in the courtroom that was heavy enough to crush lungs. The reporters were frantically typing on their phones, broadcasting the fall of the Winfield heir in real time. But I was not looking at them. I was looking at my parents. For a moment, They just stared at the empty space where their son had been. It was as if their entire identity had been dragged out of the room with him. Then, slowly, terrifyingly, their heads turned. They looked at me, and then it happened. The moment I had never, in my wildest dreams, actually expected to see: my mother, Patricia Winfield, the woman who had looked down her nose at me since the day I was born. The woman who believed she was American royalty, moved toward me. She did not march. She did not strut. She stumbled. She crossed the aisle, ignoring the bailiff who started to step forward. She reached the defense table, and she fell to her knees. The sound of her knees hitting the hard carpet was dull and heavy. She reached out and grabbed the hem of my suit jacket, her fingers digging into the fabric with a desperation that was almost painful to watch. "Hazel," she sobbed. It was a guttural, ugly sound. "Hazel, please, you have to stop this. You have to tell the judge it was a mistake. You have to pay his bail." I looked down at her. I saw the gray roots in her hair that she could no longer afford to dye. I saw the terror in her eyes. It was not love for Tyler that drove her to her knees. It was the fear of losing the extension of herself. "Get up," I said. My voice was calm, devoid of any warmth. "No," she cried, clinging tighter. "Not until you promise you have money. Hazel, we know you have money. You have the trust fund. You have the millions from the house. You can write a check right now, $500,000. That is all it is to you, just a number on a screen. But for him, it is his life. He cannot go to jail. Hazel, he is soft. He will die in there." "He should have thought about that before he stole retirement funds from teachers and firefighters," I said. "He made a mistake," she screamed, her voice rising to a shriek that made the remaining spectators flinch. "He is your brother. Doesn't blood mean anything to you? Are you so cold, so heartless, that you would let your own flesh and blood rot in a cage just to prove a point?" She looked up at me, mascara running down her face, begging for the mercy she had never once shown me. "Drop the lawsuit," she pleaded. "Drop the defamation charges. Tell the IRS it was a misunderstanding. Please, Hazel, I am begging you. I have never begged for anything in my life. I am begging you now. I am your mother." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I searched for any flicker of genuine maternal love, any sign that she saw me as a human being and not just a resource to be exploited. I found nothing. I remembered the cold wind on the porch. I remembered the way she had looked at me when I refused to let them invade my sanctuary. I heard her voice echoing in my head, loud and clear, screeching the words that had severed the final thread between us. "So we sleep on the street." A small, dark smile touched my lips. "Get off the floor." "Patricia," I said. I did not call her mom. She froze. The use of her first name hit her like a physical blow. She slowly released my jacket and pulled herself up, helped by my father who had shuffled over to stand beside her. "You asked me a question a few weeks ago," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet room. "When you stood on my porch, do you remember what you screamed at me?" She blinked, confused. "I was upset. You shouted, 'So we sleep on the street,'" I repeated. "You were terrified that without my help, without my house, you would be homeless." Her eyes darted around the room, seeing the reporters watching. She tried to salvage some dignity. "Yes, and you said no. You left us with nothing." "I have been thinking about that," I said. "And I decided you were right. It is not fitting for the parents of Hazel Winfield to sleep on the street. It reflects poorly on me. Hope, it is a dangerous, cruel thing." I watched it spark in her eyes. I watched her posture straighten. I watched my father look up, his mouth opening slightly. They thought I had broken. They thought the guilt had finally worked. "You mean it," my mother breathed. "Oh, Hazel, thank God. I knew it. I knew deep down you were a good girl. I knew you wouldn't abandon us." She reached out to hug me. I took a step back. "I bought a house," I said. "A house?" My father perked up. "Which one? Is it big? Is it nearby?" It is very nearby, I said. In fact, you know it well. I bought the property at 892 Elm Street. My mother gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. The old house. Our house. The Victorian. I nodded. The one you sold 6 months ago to fund Tyler's crypto scheme. The one you raised us in. I bought it back from the investors who flipped it. I paid cash. $750,000. We closed escrow this morning. My mother started to cry again. But this time, they were tears of relief. Oh, Hazel. Oh, thank you. It is a miracle. It is poetic. We get our home back. We can start over. We will fix up your old room just the way you like it, in case you ever want to visit. And Tyler, my father added eagerly, when he gets out on bail, he can come there. It is familiar. It will be good for his stress. They were already moving in mentally. They were already arranging the furniture. They were already celebrating their victory. They thought they had won. They thought that after everything, after the theft, the insults, the lawsuits, I had still served them everything they wanted on a silver platter. I let them enjoy that feeling for exactly 5 seconds. Then I crushed it. You misunderstand, I said softly. They stopped. The smiles faltered. I did not buy the house for you, I said. What? My mother tilted her head. But you just said, I bought the house, I continued, because I needed a place for Bianca and the children to live. I turned slightly and gestured to Bianca, who was standing behind me, looking stunned. I transferred the deed to Bianca Winfield 10 minutes ago, I said. It is her house now. It is in her name, sole ownership. It is a trust for Mason and Olivia, to ensure they have a stable home to grow up in, a home where they will never have to worry about eviction, a home where they will be safe. Bianca, my mother looked at her daughter-in-law with venom. But she betrayed Tyler. She testified against him. She told the truth, I said, and for that, she gets the house. And us, my father asked, his voice trembling. What about us, Hazel? We can stay in the guest cottage, right? Or the basement suite. We can help with the kids. I shook my head slowly. No, you cannot. Why not? My mother demanded. It is our house. We built that life. Because, I said, leaning in close so they could see the absolute resolve in my eyes. That house is a sanctuary for the victims of this family. And you two, you are not victims. You are the architects of the disaster. You are the ones who created Tyler. I will not let you poison my niece and nephew the way you poisoned us. You are banned from the property. Bianca has already filed a restraining order. If you step foot on that lawn, you will be arrested. Then where do we go? My mother screamed, the hope shattering into sharp, jagged pieces. We have no money. We have no home. You can't just leave us on the sidewalk. I am not leaving you on the sidewalk, I said. I am a professional. I have a plan for every contingency. I reached into my briefcase. I pulled out a thin envelope. I did some research, I said. I found a list of state-funded assisted living facilities that accept residents with zero assets. There is one in South Chicago. It is basic, shared rooms, cafeteria food, strict curfew, but it is warm, and it is dry. My mother looked at the list as if it were contaminated with a deadly virus. A state home. With poor people. Hazel, I am Patricia Winfield. I cannot live in a facility. You are Patricia Winfield, who is currently indigent, I reminded her. Beggars cannot be choosers. I won't go, my father said stubbornly. I refuse. Then I have a second option, I said. Option B. I pulled out 2 printed tickets from the envelope. Do you remember Cousin Ralph? I asked. My father's face went pale. Ralph. In Florida. The mechanic. The very same, I smiled. I called him last night. He was very interested to hear about your situation. He said he remembers how you used to make fun of his grease-stained hands at Christmas parties. He remembers how you called him a failure because he worked for a living. So, my mother spat, what does that grease monkey have to do with us? He has a garage, I said. It is not insulated, but it has a cot. He said he is willing to let you stay there, rent-free. A garage? My mother looked like she was going to be sick. There is a condition, I added. Ralph runs a busy shop. He needs someone to sweep the floors, scrub the oil stains, and clean the bathrooms. He said if you are willing to work, really work, he will give you a roof over your heads. Labor, my father gasped. Manual labor. I am 65 years old. Then you better start stretching, I said. These are bus tickets, one way, to Jacksonville, Florida. The bus leaves at 4 o'clock this afternoon from the downtown terminal. I held the tickets out. This is it, I said. The state home, or the garage, those are your choices. I will sue you, my mother hissed. I will tell the press you are a monster. Go ahead, I said calmly. But before you do, you should know one more thing. I pulled out one final document. It was a single sheet of paper, a photocopy of a loan application. This is the application for the fraudulent loan Tyler tried to take out in my name, I said. The one Detective Miller just arrested him for. My father stopped breathing. I noticed something interesting when I looked at the cosigner section, I said, locking eyes with my father. The signature looked familiar. It wasn't forged by Tyler. It was signed by you, Arthur. You knowingly co-signed a fraudulent loan using a stolen identity. That is conspiracy to commit wire fraud. That carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years in federal prison. My father started to shake. Violent, uncontrollable tremors. He knew I had him. He knew that I held his freedom in my hand. I have not given this document to the police yet, I said softly. I held it back. Call it a retirement gift. I stepped closer. If you take the tickets, I whispered, if you get on that bus and you disappear from my life, and from Bianca's life, forever this document stays in my shredder. But if you stay here, if you give one more interview, if you harass Bianca one time, I hand this to Detective Miller, and you will join Tyler in a cell. I looked at my mother. And you, Patricia, will be truly alone. No husband, no son, just you and the street. My mother looked at my father. She saw the terror in his eyes. She saw the defeat. She realized, for the first time in her life, that the game was rigged and she had lost every single hand. She snatched the bus tickets from my hand. She did not say thank you. She did not say goodbye. She just grabbed my father's arm and pulled him toward the door. They looked small. They looked shrunken. The arrogance that had fueled them for decades had evaporated, leaving behind two old, frightened people rushing to catch a bus to a life of scrubbing toilets in a mechanic's garage. I watched them go. I watched them push through the heavy doors and vanish into the rain. The courtroom was empty now, save for Bianca and myself. The reporters had chased the police car carrying Tyler. Bianca walked up to me. She was holding the deed to the house I had given her. You really did it, she whispered. You really sent them away. It was the only way to be sure, I said. They are like mold, Bianca. If you leave even a little bit, it grows back. You have to scrub it all away. Thank you, she said, for the house, for saving us. Do not thank me, I said, putting my sunglasses on. Just raise those kids to know the value of $1 and the value of the truth. I will, she promised. I walked out of the courtroom. I walked down the long marble corridor, my heels clicking a steady rhythm. I walked out into the city of Chicago. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking. A shaft of pale, winter sunlight was hitting the pavement. I took a deep breath. The air tasted clean. I had no parents. I had no brother. I was 32 years old, and I was entirely, wonderfully alone. I hailed a taxi. Where to? The driver asked. 142 Blackwood Lane, I said. The Willow Estate. Going home? He asked. I smiled, a real smile. Yes, I said. I am going home. The autumn season arrived at the Willow Estate with the subtlety of a painter adding the final. golden brushstrokes to a masterpiece, the weeping willows, which had been a lush, verdant green when the war with my family began, were now draped in cascading curtains of amber and bronze. The air had turned crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and dried leaves, a sharp contrast to the humid, suffocating heat of the courtroom 6 months ago. I stood on the stone terrace, wrapping my wool cardigan tighter around myself. The garden below was preparing for winter. The roses had been pruned. The fountain was turned off. Its basin swept clean of debris. It was quiet. For the first time in my 32 years of life, the silence was not an emptiness waiting to be filled with insults or demands. It was a presence. It was a tangible, luxurious weight that settled over the property like a protective blanket. It has been 180 days since the gavel fell. The legal system, usually a slow and lumbering beast, had moved with surprising speed, fueled by the undeniable clarity of the evidence I had provided. The Economic Crimes Unit did not deal in feelings. They dealt in ledgers, and Tyler's ledgers were a confession written in math. Tyler was sentenced 3 weeks ago, 5 years in a federal correctional facility. The judge had been lenient, citing his lack of prior convictions, but she had been firm on the restitution. He would spend the next half-decade in a 6x8 cell, wearing a uniform that cost less than the handkerchiefs he used to carry. There would be no bottle service. There would be no adoring fans. There would only be the relentless routine of confinement and the knowledge that he had gambled his life on a lie and lost. I did not go to the sentencing. I read about it in the paper, in a small column on page 6. The headline was simple: Local entrepreneur sentenced for fraud. The Golden Prince had been reduced to 3 paragraphs of black ink. As for my parents, their fate was less judicial, but perhaps more punishing. Arthur and Patricia Winfield were currently residents of Jacksonville, Florida. I knew this not because we spoke, but because Cousin Ralph sent me monthly updates. Ralph, the mechanic my parents had sneered at for decades, had turned out to be a man of strict discipline. He wrote to tell me that my father was learning how to properly degrease an engine block. Though he complained incessantly about his arthritis, my mother had been assigned to the front desk and the cleaning rotation. Apparently, Patricia Winfield, who once claimed she was allergic to generic brands, was now scrubbing the customer waiting area with industrial cleaner. They tried to call me. Of course, for the first month, my phone logged 14 calls a day from blocked numbers or payphones. They left voicemails ranging from tearful apologies to venomous curses. Hazel, we are sorry. Hazel, send money. Hazel, you are a devil. I listened to none of them. I simply forwarded the logs to the harassment unit at the police department to maintain the paper trail. And then I changed my number. I blocked them, not just on my phone, but from my life. I severed the connection completely. It was not cruel. It was surgical. When a limb is gangrenous, you do not keep it because you are fond of how it used to look. You cut it off to save the body. I took a sip of my tea, Earl Grey. Hot and strong. The sound of tires on gravel drew my attention to the driveway. But this time, I did not tense up. I did not check the security cameras with dread. A small sedan pulled up. It was Bianca. She stepped out of the car. Looking different, the tension that used to pull her skin tight around her eyes was gone. She had gained a little weight, looking healthy and robust. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, clothes that were practical and warm. She opened the back door, and 2 small figures tumbled out, Mason and Olivia. Aunt Hazel. They ran toward me, their little boots thumping on the stone steps. I knelt down, opening my arms, and caught them. They smelled of apple juice and cold air. Careful, Bianca laughed, walking up the steps. They have been eating sugar all morning. They are allowed, I said, standing up to hug her. How is the house? It is perfect, Bianca said, her smile genuine. The heater made a funny noise last week, but I called a repairman and paid for it myself, with my own paycheck. Bianca had found a job as an administrative assistant at a local nonprofit. It did not pay a fortune, but combined with the fact that she had no mortgage thanks to the deed I had transferred to the trust in her name, she was independent. She was free. And the divorce? I asked. Finalized on Tuesday, she said. I have full custody. Tyler gets supervised visitation once a month. If he behaves in prison, he hasn't requested it yet. He won't, I said. He is too ashamed to let them see him in a jumpsuit. Good, Bianca said, her voice hard. I don't want them seeing him like that. I want them to forget the drama. I want them to just be kids. We walked inside. Today was not a day for business. It was a day for celebration. I had invited a few people over, not a gala, not a networking event, just a gathering. Mister Vance was already in the library, admiring the fire. He held a glass of sherry and winked at me when I entered. The accounts are balanced. Hazel, he said, raising his glass. They certainly are. Arthur, I replied. Mr. Sterling, my boss, was there too. He had reinstated me the day after the charges were dropped. With a promotion and a significant raise, he had even apologized, in his own stiff way, for doubting me. You handle pressure well. Winfield, he had said, that is a rare commodity. We sat in the living room, the fire crackling in the hearth. There were no speeches. There was no showing off. We ate finger sandwiches and drank tea. We talked about books, about the weather, about the future. I looked around the room. These people, Bianca, the kids, Vance, Sterling, they were not my blood relations, but they were my people. They respected me. They did not see me as an ATM or a scapegoat. They saw Hazel. I excused myself for a moment and walked to the hallway. I stopped in front of the portrait of Grandpa Elias. The oil paint had cracked slightly with age, but his eyes were as bright as ever. I reached out and touched the frame. You were right, I whispered to him. You told me to watch the numbers. You told me the truth was in the ledger. I had done more than just watch the numbers. I had used them as a shield and a sword. I had protected the legacy he built. The Willow estate was safe. The money was safe. But more importantly, the dignity of the name Winfield had been salvaged from the wreckage my parents had created. I had broken the cycle. Mason and Olivia would grow up in the old house on Elm Street, but they would grow up knowing that love is not transaction-based. They would know that family is about support, not exploitation. I walked back into the living room. Mason was trying to teach Mr. Vance how to play a game on his tablet. Olivia was asleep on Bianca's lap. It was a tableau of perfect, boring normalcy, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. That evening, after everyone had left, I sat alone in the library. The house was silent again, but the quality of the silence had changed. It was no longer a defensive silence. It was a peaceful one. I sat in the leather armchair by the fire, a book open on my lap. It was a first edition of The Count of Monte Cristo. A little joke I shared with myself. I watched the flames dance, consuming the wood, turning it into heat and light. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. They say it is hollow, that it leaves you empty. I closed the book and looked out the window at the moon rising over my estate. I did not feel empty. I felt full. I felt heavy with the satisfaction of a job completed to perfection. I had not acted out of malice. I had not stooped to their level. I had simply applied the law. I had applied the consequences they had spent a lifetime avoiding. I stood up and walked to the window. Seeing my reflection in the glass, I looked different than I had 6 months ago. The lines of tension around my mouth were gone. My shoulders were lower. I was no longer the invisible accountant. I was the keeper of the gate. I do not call this revenge, I said aloud, my voice steady and sure in the quiet room. I call this cleaning. And finally, after 32 years of mess, I looked around the pristine, majestic room. My house is clean. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening from a busy city, a quiet countryside, or maybe even your own Willow estate? Please leave a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on Hazel's journey. If you enjoyed seeing justice served and want to support more stories like this, please subscribe to the channel Blue Payback, like this video, And smash that hype button to help this story reach even more people.